Hello everyone, and welcome to Fleet's Random Ramblings 49. Yeah, 49! One more before the big 50. Pity it didn't come with such a... well, wouldn't say price tag, but... how do I put this gently? I wish it wasn't quite so gloomy with the rest of my life. But I'll not bore you all with that. What? You know, I know why you're all here. You're here to watch a Yorkshireman, who doesn't sound like a Yorkshireman, ramble on about things about which he knows a little bit, and just enough to perhaps be vulnerable to the Dunning-Kruger effect. But I hope not. What? You know, I know. Well, we can but hope. Right, let me just send this out to the folks on Patreon. And then... we'll go and get the Discord crowd in. And we can get started properly. Also, if you do want Fleet to be able to keep rambling, then I don't do this very often, and in fact I might not ever do this ever again. But if you could like, subscribe, share it, and support me on Patreon, so I can keep these videos coming to you as regularly as they have become a part of my life as they are perhaps a part of yours. And here we go. Once again, we bring our audiences from two platforms together, with YouTube and Discord, and all that entails. Including Chair, who is back, who I have not seen since last Saturday.
I guess not.
Been a while. It was an enjoyable Saturday, though.
Why is there a garden chair here?
Yeah, nothing.
Because
Because he can be. And because I like Chair. Chair is my friend.
Hey Fleet,
Yes.
want some tubes?
No thank you, I do not require tubes. What do I look like?
You're getting tubes.
What do I look like? A stationary boiler to you? Hello, Raptorat Knight on YouTube. Nice to see you. But yes, I don't often do this, but for those of you who aren't aware, Fleet is more broke than he used to be a couple of days ago. So, if you could, like and subscribe on the YouTubes, and support me on Patreon, if you can, it would be... yes, CJ, I am once again asking for financial support. If you want Ramblings to keep coming, I need money! I cannot live on nothing. I am looking for other work at the same time, but... currently between jobs, as of Wednesday I will be. I did! And now I no longer have a job. Because they decided they don't need me anymore. And because it's, you know, well, it's complicated. But anyway, let's get on with the questions! And start the clock for Dr. Clark showing up.
If you call someone gay, you shouldn't have called gay or something.
No?
What?
It was just... it's really... It's the most company-based thing you can imagine. I'm currently working through an agency because it was an easy way to get some quick money. And also it was very flexible when I needed flexibility after coming back from university. The problem is the company is... the company decided they'd rather bring people over from their Manchester Manchester warehouse to the one in literally near where I am, rather than paying me to come in through an agency. Which is kind of annoying, but I understand. Okay, so we've got Knight and Raptor. I'm just waiting, so no YouTube questions as of yet. And we have the first questions from Discord. AAMC Woods asks, you are a Roman governor in Gaul during the reign of Caesar Augustus in 680 and are tasked with conquering all of Germania and bringing it into the Roman Empire. What forces do you use, and what is your overall strategy for going about this campaign? I don't know. I am not a student of Roman history. It is not something that interests me.
Yeah, there's a few questions above that, by the way.
Oh. Here we go. AMC was, what if the Army of the Potomac at its max strength during the Gettysburg campaign with enough supplies and ammunition for 2 years of hard campaigning was sent just prior to the Battle of New York during the American War of Independence? How does the rest of the land theatre go? The Americans win harder, I guess? Maybe? That's
I mean, 2 years of supplies and ammunition, that's a lot.
like if you
Not
got-
really. Not really.
Well, yeah.
during the American War of
having it
Independence.
all
Yeah,
win-
it is.
Yeah, but you have to remember. But that's. I suppose it depends where they get sent back, because they could quite easily use half of that getting to the combat.
Just prior to the Battle of New York during the American War of Independence. So presumably in or near New York, just prior to them. I don't. Again, this is not an area where I am. The American War of Independence is not an area I know barely anything about. I know there were some battles that took place. I know Washington took boat across river at some point during ice conditions. And
This is before the Prussian reforms the Continental Army, basically single-handed alongside George Washington. Which means that
I mean, you have got
might
the
actually
army
turn
of
out worse for the Americans.
I mean, no, but you've got the Army of Potomac coming back, which during the Gettysburg campaign, this is the army that fights the Battle of Gettysburg with the officers it has at the Battle of Gettysburg. So the effect will be much the same. You're probably giving the Continental Army more men than it actually has already, with better weaponry.
Oh, well, yeah, it's a much larger army. This is the Army of the Potomac. This is what?
At its max
4
strength during the Gettysburg.
cores?
3,
4 cores?
I think it's. I
Hang on,
think it's
I'm Googling this now.
Army of the Potomac max strength. I think was 7 core, although they were slightly smaller than Confederate core. Because the Confederate army had
I'm
3.
Googling.
The Confederate army had 3 core, but they were large core. The Union
Yeah,
army
sorry,
had
1,
7.
2, 3, 5, 6, 9, and 11 corps, along with the cavalry. This is a big army.
That is a
obviously.
force. That is a force to drive the British out of America in about a year.
No,
I
it's
mean,
not.
If you,
Yes, it
No,
is.
because you can't march an army throughout the 13 colonies.
that is true.
Idiot.
Well, no, but but you
No,
can.
but it took
If you think, but
Napoleonic
if you
armies
think about
years to march across Germany.
It doesn't take Foxo. It doesn't take that long. You are vastly overstating the ability to move armies.
and if you think about the if you think about the size of the British fort, you could easily split. You could just send one corps.
This
to
is what I
deal
mean.
with.
Yeah, this is what I mean. The amount of force you're sending back with the weaponry they have, you're talking about
The British in the mid war are like in New York and Charleston. Like they just give up on most of the rest of the colonies for a certain
Yeah,
bit. It's
because-
like, we can't man all of this.
Yeah,
Fuck
because
it,
they're
Charleston and New
they're
York.
basically like this is the period where the British are about to come back with what was the hammer blow that very nearly destroyed 13 colonies as an independent state. We've just now denied them that hammer blow.
And I mean, they've got, of course, the artillery's just the rifles and the artillery are just so much better as well. Because they got, it's going to be Patton 53, Springfield 61s.
Which
Yeah,
are
these are-
rifled, and therefore you can actually,
And quite frankly, they're cap locked as well. They're much more reliable pieces.
yes, they are.
I mean, and also, I suppose, actually, this might have an impact on, like, naval campaign stuff as well, because these are much longer range shell-firing guns.
Oh god, yeah, that's gonna be a problem for ships in harbors in.
Mm.
Yeah, that
Like,
may
suddenly,
be a problem.
suddenly they can fire accurately at, like, 5-6 miles a shell. Yeah, which, you can't...
Heck, even if they're worn down, they're still a shell. It's a explosive shell.
Well, if they're just, like... hang on, let's see what's in the artillery reserve. Do they have any heavy batteries with them? Because I mean, a lot of them are. First Connecticut heavy battery. So these guys are packing.
68 pounders, something like that, something like heavy as the gun.
Wow. Okay. So okay, now this is at Fort Richardson. They have some pretty hefty pieces. These look like older guns, but these are at least 32 pounds, I think.
It's possible.
And of course, they've got 24-pound Napoleon guns, 12-pound Napoleon guns. Those are
Yeah, those are nasty pieces
pretty
of work.
nasty. And 3-inch ordnance rifles. I think they probably have some of the Parrott guns as well. Some of the 10-pounders.
But it's funny, actually. I've just realised that we didn't actually have Dr. Clark drop in last week, which is actually kind of funny. Maybe he won't drop in this week. We don't know. Then again, I did crash his party yesterday, so he'll probably return the favour today. Then again, same thing happened last week. He didn't show up. Maybe the thing is, if I crash his party, he doesn't crash mine. Haha! Preemptive crashing.
Right.
So, yeah, I need to actually go back and then forwards.
I'm sorry, but that's the same energy. If I step on this landmine, he can't step on this landmine.
Shush, Dr. Foxo.
It's easy. Healing is not as rewarding as the hurting.
CJ asks, what do you think of the NAR UAD update with the 7 new nations? I've not played it yet, so I can't really comment. Brackman asks, with the available ships in Sins 2, what would you say the fleet doctrine is for the Tech Enclave? You can't... The problem with Sins is that all of the ships are specialist or generalist and are designed to enable you to craft your own fleet doctrine. It's the reason why the ships picked and the designs used are the way they are. They have no set doctrine. They allow you to craft a fleet that works any number of different ways. It's the point of all the different campaigns.
Behold all of my missile cruisers.
Basically, yeah. Or behold all of my gun cruisers, or behold all of my carriers, etc., etc., etc. Again, it's all down to you all get the idea. Darth Sidious asks, how often do ships get new captains during their service life? Do smaller ships, torpedo boats, corvettes, destroyers change captains less or more than larger ships? I'm going to be honest, personnel is not something with which I'm very familiar.
Ship get new captain when ship need new captain.
Usually
Well,
by
Some
that
ship
person...
need new captain often. Some ship no need new captain often.
It also depends on when. I mean, in modern rotations, you're probably only looking 2-3 years per senior command staff, especially.
Usually because during peacetime you want to give people opportunity for advancement.
In wartime, absolutely, just keep the crew on it until it goes in for a major, until the ship goes into a major refit, where it's out of service for a while, and they want the crew somewhere else.
Yes. Because ideally you don't want to be shaking up fleet structure during wartime if you can help it. Peacetime is the time for advancement, wartime is the time for fighting.
No, peacetime is the time for invention.
No,
Wartime is the time for...
No, I'm talking about personnel and officers, Foxo.
Yeah?
Not...
Yeah, with personnel, peacetime is the time for innovation and training. With training. And for structure. Wartime's for optimization. Run in, turned up. Shit. Run away!
You're typical gunnery officer. First question. Thoughts on the Fram refit Fletchers, and do you think post-refit these destroyers should be designated as frigates, and do you think Fletchers in the 1960s, the US had overstretching their hull life? I think I've answered exactly this question a couple of ramblings ago, but to very, very quickly recap, no, the Fram refit Fletchers are not frigates. What they are is showing the US what their frigates will be. If you notice what the US frigates are when they build their first purpose-built frigates, you'll notice specs very similar to the Fram refits and what the Fram refits can do. The reason that the Fram refits are still destroyers and the frigates that come after them are frigates is because of the way those designations are changing and ship sizes are increasing. It's also worth pointing out that even after the Fram refit, the Fletchers still have the speed to be destroyers, whereas the frigates are slower vessels. Some of them even dropping below 30 knots in terms of speed coefficient and what they can do.
This is just giving me frigate is frigate vibes.
So that's that. Your typical gunnery officer. Thoughts on the Marco Polo Bridge incident? Do you think it's the first event that's going to start World War II? And do you think the Germans copied it for their Gleiwitz incident? I think it's an event in a chain that leads to World War II, but it's not the first or last event that leads to World War II. Because you could argue that the first human throwing a rock at another human is the first event that leads to World War II. This is the thing. There's no... Like, you
have
can't...
a group of...
Yeah,
World War II started because a fish decided to crawl out of water.
Yeah, exactly. It's that sort of thing. You can't... Like, I don't like saying events lead to things. I like saying that this event caused this, which had led to this, which happened this, but it wasn't the thing that... One of the things that started it. It's just this led to this, led to this, led to this. It wasn't the first event that led to World War II. And do you think the Germans copied it for their Gleiwitz incident? Let me have a look.
That's the one on Poland where they tried to claim Poland attack them first.
Yes, that is correct. However,
the rest of the world looked to them and went,
quite literally no one believed it. Like, it's...
Gleiwitz
yeah, is such a small footnote in...
And of course, it was so sloppily done as well.
when your opponent has the secret ability to just ask, did you do this?
Yeah. Rose asks, do you think Hiei should have been converted to a carrier over Kaga? Hiei was disarmed, and I know Kaga's speed ended up being one of her big downsides. It seems like Hiei could fix a lot of those problems if converted. Now, it's important to bear in mind that the reason that Kaga was chosen is that she was of a similar size to Akagi. And what mattered most to the Japanese was getting two carriers of similar capabilities with roughly ballpark equivalent performance. And the thing is, once Kaga's kinks are worked out, she's breaking 28, 29 knots. The problem you have is if the carriers try to ramp up even higher than that. That's where her problems lie. It's not so much normal operations, it's if the Hidebutai goes for a sprint that Kaga starts having problems. Hiei is a much smaller ship, she's also more complete, and the Japanese did plan, as eventually happened, to bring her back into service as a full-scale battlecruiser, hence why they so lovingly wrapped away her guns and armor plate.
Also, Hiei's at this point still coal-fired,
Yes.
before the big rebuilds.
Exactly. Yeah, this is the thing.
And coal-fired carrier, no worky. Well...
YouTube question now. Nats81, if the British got the Westland Wyvern in World War II, would they go for piston engines on their post-war airliners after all the conversions? Well, the Wyvern is a turboprop, first of all. Not a piston-engined aircraft. And
which one? It's one RS2.
And the British did go in for turboprops on a lot of their airliners. The Viscount, the Britannia.
Britannias, yeah.
Like, we went hard on the turboprop. Like, we led the way with turboprop-driven airliners. Like, it took Fokker coming along with the F-27 Friendship to dethrone the British turboprop dominance in the short, medium, and long-range markets. Although
also took de Havilland fucking up as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that the comets kept exploding.
Yes.
Wasn't exactly good for jets.
Look, they should have learned from the pre-war and de Havilland plus civilian equal kabang.
Well, it wasn't okay. The thing with the comets going up wasn't exactly de Havilland's fault. It was an entirely new type of commercial flying, one that hadn't been done very often.
Yeah, it's just even before the war, he couldn't design a civilian aircraft well,
Well,
and his team inherited that.
no, the Comet was a world beater with an unforeseen problem.
Yeah, but when the unforeseen problem, Fleet, is that it keeps exploding.
And emergency depressurizing at high altitude.
I mean, yeah, yes, the Comets were very good and very advanced aircraft, but they had a particularly fatal flaw that got fixed, but certainly did not lend themselves well. When your first of a kind explodes, you have problems. Like, well, I suppose technically Hindenburg wasn't bad, but when things have habits for exploding, they kind of lose popularity. Just ever so slightly.
Just a bit. Where were we? If Canada had ordered a pair of Queen Elizabeths before World War One, how would they have been used in post-war? Would the Canadians retain their own QEs in exchange for the RN to get rid of their two of their R-class battleships? Well, if the Canada has a pair of QEs ordered, they will be completed and commissioned probably into the Royal Canadian Navy, but will serve in the Grand Fleet with British crews, or mostly British crews, until the aftermath of the war. If the Canadians have two QEs, the Canadians may be inducted into the Washington Naval Treaty as the smallest power. So you'll have Britain and her dominions, except for Canada, which will have its own treaty obligation. Because that was... Remember, the dominions were told they could have their own treaty obligations, they all chose not to.
Fleet expensive.
But if Canada has a pair of QEs, they're going to keep that pair of QEs. There's a difference between building new ship and retaining ship already have.
But ship's still expensive.
You're
And
basically...
Canada doesn't have a large population base at this point.
Yeah, you're basically looking at the Canadians basically having an Atlantic and a Pacific fleet, each centered around one of the QEs.
No?
Yes.
Vancouver's not developed. Vancouver's very fucking tiny right now. At this point.
Okay.
There isn't an actual base for them on the Pacific side.
That's fair.
Alright, fair enough. So the
If you try and base a QE out of Vancouver at this point, you just get a very confused Vancouver.
I suppose. That's a fair point, but... Alright, so I
Hey,
didn't realize
can we
Vancouver...
borrow that for a local power station rather than, running this?
But yeah, so... thing is, you're looking at... So you're looking at the same Washington Naval Treaty, except the Canadians have this tonnage for these two battleships, and, like tonnage for cruisers, etc. Although they may have a very... So... You're probably looking at the British having to give up some of the 13.5-inch ships during the actual treaty system, so you're probably looking at the Orions, KGVs, and the Iron Dukes going, rather than being kept around. Basically, but not much more will change. Then you're basically looking at the Canadians probably buying into the Royal Navy's modernization program. Basically, yeah, there you are. It's just going to be 2 more QEs in World War II. Have fun, Germany and Japan.
I would disagree with you there.
Why?
I don't think they're going to survive the Great Depression in Canadian hands.
Well, they will probably be subsidized from the home country because the British are not going to let one of their dominions throw away 2 battleships.
Yeah, the British are going to look at where money for fleet. Canada's economy has just done its best impression of the US economy, except it can't put the economy on the economy to fix the economy like the US can.
I'm aware of that, however, the British Empire has a habit of not letting warships that are very valuable go away. And that's a pair of QEs. It's not like a pair of old cruisers. It's a pair of QEs. I'm sure the money can be found from from British coffers to retain that pair of ships, even if the Canadians don't want them. The British will probably pay for the upkeep. At least
I would British want them.
because it's a pair of Queen Elizabeth class battleships.
Yeah, but as far as the British are concerned, they're going to be replaced before they gain another global war.
Not in the 1930s. You're
Yeah,
thinking...
the 10 year
Yeah, it's the whole
doctrine
thing.
sort of goes out of favour and sort of. I suppose, yeah. The question
It's the whole
is,
thing. They're
how
expecting
long do
to
they
have
hold on?
They're expecting to have Lion and Lion successors in before the outbreak of any sort of war with
Yes,
Germany. again.
Foxo, but that thinking is still 6 or 7 years away. We're talking about the Great Depression, which starts in 1929.
So there is no threat, and these ships are very expensive.
It is a pair of fairly modern battleships. The Royal Navy is not going to let what to them might be a secret advantage over a lot of their rivals go away.
But
No,
it's not
they
a
will-
secret
they will-
advantage.
They will find the
No.
money. Well, an advantage then. An additional pair of fast battleships go away. The money will probably be found.
Somewhere behind the couch.
Knight 6A31 asks, how big of a butterfly do RN older experimental carriers operating late 30s and 40s era planes getting them at the time the carrier is created? So what you're saying is... you're saying if the Spitfire... You're saying Glorious, Furious, Courageous... Hermes, Eagle, Argus getting the aircraft they operated in the late 30s, early 40s. That's going to have a ridiculous impact on... That's going to have an impact on aviation so ridiculous that I don't think I can answer that one.
Would it though?
Yes. Yes, it
Because
would.
what it's going to tell Rolls-Royce is, we're already doing it correctly.
You're talking about bringing aircraft from 30 years down the line to 1920, 1922, 23.
Yeah.
That is going to jump aviation forwards by that time, for Britain at least.
Well, not really. And hear me out on this. Cool, they've got the aircraft, but do they have the maths about the aircraft and how the design maths?
I
Because
feel
a
like
lot
Rolls-Royce
of the-
engineers can just grab a Merlin and tear it apart.
And I will
go,
point out, Foxo,
that's
yeah.
how we built
and I
all
will
of that.
point
Yeah,
out,
but,
Foxo,
okay, yeah.
they're not going to build the aircraft themselves. It will lead to a tranche of new designs based on the thinking and theories that these designs suggest are possible. They won't just get a Spitfire and go, yes, build Spitfire. They'll go, yes, build monoplane fighter aircraft with elliptical wings and inline engine.
Yeah, so they're going
and
to do
of
what
Merlin's power, or more.
so they're so they're going to do what they're already doing
No, they're
at
going
the same rate because they're still figuring out how monoplanes work.
Foxo, it's the 1920s. Monoplanes are a proven, well-understood concept and have been for about
Yeah,
10 years at
yeah,
this
yeah.
point.
But there's a difference between proven it works and how do you make an efficient monoplane?
No, Foxo, they've been in...
I think you've also got all metal skins as well.
No,
Okay.
efficient,
Yeah.
efficient monoplanes have been around for about 5 years by the 20s.
Yes, but there is efficient monoplane. Then there's
You keep
yes.
moving the goalposts.
No, I'm not, because what I'm saying is that, okay, how do these wings work when it's the elliptical wings, when it's how a World War II aircraft functions? They're already figuring that out in the 20s. And it's just going to
Why
be
don't they get built
it's
in the
possible.
20s?
Because they're still figuring it out.
But by getting the aircraft, they've now figured it out, so they can start
Yeah,
building it sooner.
yeah. Look, all I'm going to say is,
They can do flight
Look.
testing, wind tunnel testing. They can...
the wind tunnels don't exist yet.
What? What are you talking about? Wind
The
tunnels
aircraft
don't
wind tunnels
exist
doesn't
yet.
exist.
We're on the verge of it by the mid-20s. And more to the point, they can do flight testing, they can do ground testing, they can disassemble, examine, poke, prod, break apart, reverse engineer. This is the thing. You're being very narrow-minded.
Yeah, but it's the case of, yay, they have these aircraft, but to start designing with them, you have to know the maths behind them.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And that's not gonna be now. And I can't go outside and look at my van and go, ah, yes, I now know how the aerodynamics of vans work because I have one.
That's
Can
not,
I?
That's not what me and Jer are saying. We're saying that it'll point them in the right direction and lead to an acceleration of what they're already doing. We're talking about the designs that we see in the late 30s and 40s appearing in perhaps, say, the early to mid 30s or 40s. We're not talking about them appearing in the 20s. We're talking about a 5 to 10 year acceleration.
I don't see that happening.
I do.
I don't for one specific reason.
If you say the maths, I'm going to yeet you off a 5-story cliff.
One word, plate. Reliable aluminium production.
That's
But
more than
that's
one
more
word.
than one word. But one sentence.
You do have a point there. The lack of aluminium, the lack of aluminium construction and stressed aluminium and flush rivets will slow down some of these things. But to be fair,
If you want to know how to build a Spitfire equivalent with wood in the 30s, look up Soviet aviation, because that'll tell you exactly how it goes wrong.
and I will tell you that they won't be building a Spitfire equivalent. They'll be building something like a Heinkel 112, or a cursed Hawker Hurricane.
All metal hurricane.
No, not all metal Hurricane. That's the thing. Not all metal Hurricane.
Oh, yeah,
Non-metal
sorry.
Hurricane. Hurricane with no metal.
Well, honestly, the more interesting thing is how this affects tanks.
Tanks? Oh, you mean
Yeah.
you mean increased engine horsepower?
No,
What do you mean?
high octane fuels.
I suppose. It's a thought. It could be.
And fuels that don't cause, shall we say, instant unaliving of everything inside the tank when the fuel tanks get hit.
Hmm.
I've been told by tank crews that is suboptimal and not a desired outcome.
Hmm.
I don't know why. Who doesn't want to explode?
Right. Okay. After
Moving on.
digging that one its own grave, Utility Officer asks, "Do you think the invasion of Okinawa outweighs the invasion of Normandy in terms of ships, aircraft, men, and material involved?" I don't know the specifics of the two invasions, but even if Okinawa did involve more men, ships, aircraft, and material, Normandy matters more and involved more nations and is more important. Okinawa was just the Americans driving the final stake into Japan. Normandy was the Allies hitting Nazi Germany in the face with a sledgehammer and beginning the liberation of Europe. These two things are not equivalent. I'm now expecting all the Marines and Marine fanboys to come out of my comments section and start lambasting me for daring to suggest the Marines aren't important.
Oh, they won't because they're not. Why would you
Yeah,
send in
airborne's better. Woo woo.
Wow.
Why would you send in the Marines when you have the army?
Well, what's the next question? Oh, so that's we've literally we have literally just answered Knight's next question because we literally just talked about it. Uh, there we go. So literally, I answered Knight's we've answered Knight's next question by expanding on his first one. So that's good. So Brackman asks, in the year 2012, Germany and the wastelands from Warhammer Fantasy get exchanged. How would the Germans react to being in a place where there is magic, demons, and other assorted horrors beyond human understanding? How would Earth fare with Germany suddenly going missing? It depends what replaces Germany. Did
it say the wastes or the chaos wastes?
No, just the wastelands from Warhammer Fantasy. It doesn't say Chaos Waste, it just says the wastelands. I don't know what that is.
Oh god, that's
am
not better. That's not better. Orcs.
I don't know or
Orcs,
play
orcs,
war.
orcs.
So the wastelands are where the orcs are in Warhammer Fantasy.
A good pot. Like there's millions of them there.
Oh, so basic. But thing is, they have no firearms and they're not 40k orcs, so it'll be relatively easy for the world to kill them.
Wait, they're essentially 40k orcs in a world that hasn't invented firearms yet. Well,
No, they don't have the Gestalt. It's not the same thing. They can't cobble together firearms. They'll be easy to kill.
yeah, because most of them don't know firearms exist.
Yes, but
They do still have the Gestalt.
No, they
Because
don't
Gork
have.
and Mork exist.
Yes, but that's not the Gestalt. The Gestalt is different from Gork and Mork. It is. The Gestalt ties in.
I
Gestalt-
would say that
the
they do
Gestalt-
not have the Gestalt.
Yeah, the Gestalt ties in to the Akashic records in the underbelly of the Immaterium. It is not related to Gork and Mork, who are their gods, which is different entirely. The Gestalt accesses knowledge. Gork and Mork are their deities created through their souls and their collective thought. Two different
And
things.
the breakdown of Gork and Morka.
Yes, two different things. So they do not have the Gestalt. They have basic clubs and axes. And we have Oh, there might be problems stopping them, but once they're stopped, it'll just be napalm, 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 napalm,
Orcs
napalm.
don't really, as the dwarfs learn the hard way, orcs don't really care about napalm.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. The napalm's just to blind them. Then the cluster bombers show
work.
up.
Don't work if magic napalm doesn't work on them.
They haven't. Yeah. Magic napalm is one thing. They ain't seen the shit we got cooked up. They ain't got nothing on the shit the US has worked with or what the Russians. Can come up
I'm
with.
sorry. A liquid which is quite literally made from the primordial fire that's from a volcano.
I don't care. It's still not as powerful as the shit we can come up
And
with.
also, orcs can use guns, and they do have guns.
Oh yes! Wow, some flintlocks. Congratulations. Well done.
No.
I
remind you that it is canon in the end times. A bunch of orcs found essentially an MLRS that the Empire had and went, right, boys. I started making them for themselves.
Yes, but those are entirely different. You're talking about what are in essence Congreve rockets. This is not like they're not going to be able to fight and / or adapt to the modern world. And the moment they start becoming that level of threat, the atom gets deployed and ends the orc threat once and for all.
Portable sunshine.
The interesting thing isn't what happens on Earth. The interesting thing is what happens to the German Republic.
Germans fucking die.
I mean, it's Germany. If they're under threat, they will go full martial prowess mode.
No. You don't understand. The wastelands border the chaos wastes. And that's where the warp monstrosities that the chaos gods don't fuck with dwell in.
That may be a problem.
That's where
You
sheer
are
gods.
legally not allowed to invade Germany. Please fill out these forms. They will kill them with bureaucracy, as they do with all things.
the Leopard 2s will put up probably a good fight, but I don't think they're gonna survive warp monstrosities. unless APDS actually kills the thing's brains when they try to manifest in the physical realm.
Oh, Fleet. We're not talking. These things don't work like demons.
Do they have physical forms? Or do they not?
Yeah. No, a lot of them are physically incapable of death.
Oh, well, in that case, then Germany's fucked. Unless the Germans basically decide to survive, we have to basically move as a society. Build a gigantic fuck-off wall on one side of their nation. Basically, abandon the eastern part of their nation, build a giant fuck-off wall, and then expand westward with the armoured fist of the Bundeswehr as fast as they can to seize more land for the German people.
Yeah.
Also go digging for oil.
Because fun fact, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like it's one of the massive mutant monstrosities. Is that old and that powerful and pretty common in the Chaos race that it does not die because it cannot comprehend death.
Wow.
Neat ability to have.
I mean, Brackman, the Empire is gone. It's Warhammer. Wait, are we talking Warhammer Fantasy, or are we talking the old world or the new world? I just realised I need to figure out which is which. If it's fantasy, it's the new.
If it's fantasy, it's either Age of Sigmar or it's Old World.
If it's Age of Sigmar, then the Germans are even more fucked because the Empire no longer exists.
No, they're not. If it's Age of Sigmar, they actually survived because they're going to be under the protection of Sigmar.
Well, that and also Sigmar will literally rock up and go like, "I have personally come down from my domain to figure out how all this shit you have works. Tell me everything."
No. Oh no. Sigmar just gives that shit to the dwarves. What Sigmar does is send his space marines to deal with the things that cannot die.
I suppose.
And then he also punches Negaroth in the face again. But that's just because he hates Negaroth.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, they would be funny with the Dark Elves. Human pornography and Dark Elves. Anyway.
Oh, good lord, I don't want to think about that. Knight61 asks an interesting question. Who out of Valiant, Resolution, and Hood is more likely the ship to blame for the French large destroyer Mogador getting hit in her stern?
Hood.
I don't know, actually. I assume they were all firing at her.
No, Hood's the one that engages everything there, so I'm just going to say her.
I'm sure it must be possible to figure out because they probably list when rounds impact and when rounds are fired. And, well, also where they're targeting. Because you don't just sort of blast a 15-inch shell randomly into a harbour. You are pointing it at something. So, yeah, I'm sure in the logs of each ship is open fire on destroyer or whatever.
Yeah, but when your 4-inch batteries have just been told to fire at will, anything tries to come out of the harbour, yeah.
I'm sure. Well, then probably also like after action reports, like, oh yeah, we shot a destroyer and it exploded. Unless all the crews said the same thing.
Yeah, we'd have to go and get a.
We'd have to sort of go to queue and go, can we get the logs for Hood, Resolution, and Valiant?
And also, they're still classified.
It's probably also a case that if we're getting what Mogador doing correctly, she was the one she was trying to rush out the harbour, wasn't she?
She was running. She'd cranked up to her full speed and was running like a stag.
So you're telling me that every battleship there's not going to open fire with its secondary batteries at the destroyer that's charging past them?
I suppose.
I'm gonna guess it's quite likely all of them. And the rest of the ships there, actually. You know, let French destroyer near battleship go kabang.
Your typical gunnery officer asks, question 5, what are your opinions on the B-47 bomber? Do you think they're stopgap bombers between the B-36 and future B-52? Do you think the B-47 is better than the Tu-16 Handley Page Victor or Vickers Valiant bombers? Also, what was the thought process of the tandem crew compartment like you would find fighter aircraft, also the bubble canopy? Okay, so, let Fleet work through it in order of complexity, because it gets more complex as it goes forward. Do I think it's a stopgap bomb between the B-36 and the B-52? No, aviation development was just progressing that fast that the B-47 was in service so little time before the B-52 came along, which was just that, but basically mature. That's how fast development was going. It wasn't a stopgap, it's just Boeing literally went back to the drawing board and said, we can do this better now, and it's only been, 4 to 5 years? Do you think the B-47 is better than the Tu-16 Handley Page Victor or Vickers Valiant bombers? I think it's better in terms of range and performance and than the Tu-16, but I think as a bomber the Tu-16 is better aircraft overall, given the way the crew are housed in the Tu-16, its ease of maintenance compared to the B-47. Oh, and the fact, the Tu-16 doesn't explode in midair / catch fire in midair. Which is something the B-47 had a big problem with. Again, Handley...
Is that a problem?
Handley Page Victor is better than the B-47 in basically every conceivable way. It is the last of the V-bombers. It is a mature British strategic bomber. It is better than the B-47. Hands down.
Well, with the Victor, it's horses for courses, because they had different jobs.
Not as high altitude. No, as high altitude strategic bombers designed to carry nuclear ordnance, the Victor is better than the B-47.
Yeah, but the
And
Victor,
that's all the B-47 was designed. That's all the B-47 ever did. It had no other role besides that.
yeah, but the Victor did.
Yes, which also adds more on top of
Makes it
it,
even
which makes it better. Yeah. The Valiant, I think, is slightly worse than the B-47 in terms of overall performance, and of course the Valiant, as we know, was rapidly replaced by the British with the Vulcan and the Victor, which were just basically better aircraft than the Valiant. The Valiant was about as conventional a large jet bomber as you could get. It was acceptable, and that's why it was used at first until better aircraft came along. Again, and also, what was the thought process of the tandem crew compartment like you would find in fighter aircraft and also the bubble canopy? In regards to why Boeing went with a tandem crew compartment, I think, I don't know, but don't take my word for it. If you think what I'm saying sounds wrong, go and check the pedia of wikis. But I think it's basically just down to Boeing basically extrapolating fighter design stylings to create the first all-jet bomber for the US. It's why the B-47 looks the way it does. And then when you get to the B-52, you have them sort of leaning back into bomber design stylings far more. Anyone else got any comments on the things that have been stated?
Vulcan better than all of them, blah. But that's not on the cards, so.
Yes.
Vulcan, my beautiful.
Question from Knight. If the Tribals were 2,800 to 3,500 ton plus destroyers, why does that not change the Didos? I don't know. Let me see. The Tribal class destroyer.
Bit of a weird question.
So basically he's saying if the Tribals are bigger, does that not change the Didos, I think is what he means. If the Tribals are
No,
big...
because they're two different lines of development.
Basically, yeah. Like, if the Tribals are commissioned as full-on destroyer leaders rather than large destroyers, which is two different things, even in this period. The Didos are anti-aircraft cruisers with a secondary service role. Or the other way around, depending on who you ask. They are significantly bigger ships than even these enlarged Tribals. Basically. Night. It's a Bulgarian officer asks, do you think the fast attack transport destroyer for the USN has evolved into the LPD, LSD, and LPH and others? Thoughts on fast attack transport destroyers and their usage in World War II? Why did they convert destroyers as transports while you have LSTs and APs? Okay, first things first. No, the faster transport destroyer did not evolve into the LPD, LSD, and LPH. They are outgrowths of the mature landing ships of the Second World War, evolving to the the requirements for faster transit speeds overall as the modern era has progressed post World War II. Thoughts on fast attack transport destroyers and their usage in World War II? Fast attack transport destroyers are an outgrowth of US realizations that there are islands in the Pacific that are vital to be taken, but are held by perhaps 2 squads of Japanese soldiers and defended by perhaps 2 pieces of artillery, if defended by artillery at all, but are perhaps vital radio communication stations that cannot be left alone while attacks are ongoing. And the reason they use converted destroyers as transports is that a converted destroyer can basically be everything you need in one. For assaulting one of those islands. It can be the fire support, it can be the transport for the troops, it can be coordination for the landings, it can be all of these things. If you're just landing 2 to 4 LSTs of troops, covered by 5-inch guns, to take an island that's perhaps less than a kilometre long, and garrisoned by 20 to 30 Japanese troops, that's all you really need. It also means you can go in, do that, and come back in like a day or 2. Because it's still a destroyer, it's still quick. If World War II delays and the RAF has 715 Bolt and Pole Defiant Mark 1 and 539 Bolt and Pole Defiant Mark 2 turret fighters, how much harder do you make the Luftwaffe's job? You don't make the Luftwaffe's job any harder. The turret fighter is a dead end.
Such a stupid aircraft.
It's one of those ideas that's fantastic on paper, but incredibly stupid when actually implemented. You've basically given the Luftwaffe either easy targets or wasted Merlin engines that could have been used to do literally anything else.
If anything, you have some engines to rip out and stick in something useful.
I will point out, the Bolt and Pole did have a niche, brief renaissance during the early deployment of night fighters with radar, during the Blitz, where it was found that it was actually fairly useful to basically pull up alongside the which it could do during the night what it couldn't do during the day. Pull up, use its radar to find a target, pull up alongside and just destroy it. Without being detected. But again, that's a brief renaissance that is probably not going to happen if the World War II is delayed.
Yeah, and it's from having worked briefly on one of the preserved Bolt and Poles, it's a very, very silly designed aircraft. I think and also working on the MB410, the guy who was one of the chief restoration guys at the Air Force Museum in Cosford, he's basically saying the MB410 is like the Bolt and Pole of German. It's like it was Messerschmitt. It was built by Messerschmitt Bolt and Pole division of how stupid some of the layout in that aircraft is.
And there you are.
Like you have to on the 410 you have to remove the fuel tanks to get the wings off. That's very silly. Because where the wing bolts are. There are 4 wing bolts, and 2 of them are hidden behind the fuel tanks. So it's just the Bolt and Pole Defiant is both a bad aircraft in concept and how they built the bloody thing, because it was built by a random British manufacturer in the 30s. They didn't think about nothing British in the 30s was built for user comfort. Like you look at aircraft, trains, cars.
That's not actually true. A number of the tank corps were actually designed for user comfort over this period.
To a certain extent, yeah. But then you've also got things like the Valiant, the A28. Like, haha, I will eat your feet.
Yeah.
Yes, but you've also literally brought up the physical worst example.
Gentlemen,
there.
gentlemen, gentlemen,
No. I feel the need to come to the defense of the Valiant here.
you can't defend
was-
the
you
Abysmal.
can't defend the Valiant.
No. I can, and
You
watch me,
you
bitch.
actually can.
Yeah, you-
Because
actually can.
the original design for the Valiant
Oh, here we go. It's the laser
wasn't
pig
that
defense.
bad. But the
And
issue
also-
is, and this is supported by Borrington and David fucking Fletcher, that it ended up as a shit tank, yes. But it got that way through committee and being passed around through several design committees that had no clue what the fuck they were doing.
But that was how a lot of things happened. It was still
No, it wasn't.
terrible.
Also,
but I will
as
point
we-
out, when it's the division of a Vulcan that makes fucking trains, and they've been given this tank and told, okay, this design needs a bit more work, finish it.
Also, there is a
People
point to be
have never
made. The
worked on
the whole leg killing thing is a bit
Thanks
of a
to
myth.
Vulcan.
It did happen once, but on average, it actually wasn't that bad.
It only happened
Well, no,
once.
it was
but the
bad.
tank was only
Only a
less than
slight
once.
shots your laser
No,
will get you.
no. It was brought. It was recently. Well, I say recently. A couple of years ago, was brought up by Chieftain David Fletcher and a couple of others that. Yes, there was one incident of it, but this is also the one incident was by someone who didn't actually know how to drive a tank and was being stupid.
No, you're getting it mixed up.
Mm,
No, the guy that
like,
got his
well,
leg eaten, because it was one guy got his leg eaten, one guy got his ankle broken. The guy who got his ankle broken was the guy who had never driven a tank before. The guy that got his leg eaten was the one who was one of the test drivers for the Valentine. And he made the mistake of assuming the Valentine drove like the Valiant drove like the Valentine, and it didn't. Arthur Pike knows, fuck you, Soviet Union, we did it first.
Anyway, so moving on from that distraction.
Yep.
Where are we? Let fleet look where we are. Question 7. What are your thoughts on US and destroyer leaders like Summers and Porter class? They were US destroyer leaders. They were roughly equivalent to their counterparts in the Royal Navy. They were the US destroyer leaders. They were slightly more powerful than the ships than the equivalent destroyers they were built to serve alongside. They served reasonably well in World War II. Some of them had single-use longer 5-inch guns, which I can totally understand the choice for, given the time they were constructed, and given the role they were designed to play.
To quote a friend of mine, cool beans, but I'd much rather be in a tribal.
I would argue also the point that, technically speaking, the Sommers isn't actually a destroyer leader. Like, the destroyer leader thing isn't really prevalent in the US. And also, for the time, the Sommers was an excellent design. They were only let down basically by the fact that their twin turrets are not dual purpose.
Yeah, but that's not
But on the
really
other hand, you have a ship here with 8 guns, 12 torpedoes.
Oh, and they're 5-inch 54s. They're like long-barreled 5-inch guns.
No, they're not. They're 38s.
No, I'm sure one of the destroyer leaders.
They're 5-inch 38s. They're the early 5-inch 38s. Like, keep in mind, these are built in 1935 and designed even earlier. They're not the 54. But they were single.
Like
they-
casemate gun, if I remember correctly.
You
That's
do,
fine.
I'm sure there
That's
was.
fine.
I'm sure there was a U.S. destroyer leader with long-barreled 5-inch guns. I am 99%.
What do you mean by destroyer leader? Because remember, destroyer leader is a very unique concept.
I would quote a friend of mine, the destroyer leader, the Panzerschleife of destroyers.
Yeah, I don't know what destroyer you're referring to, but at this time, all of them are 5-inch 38s. Like, unless you're basically going to something that's far more advanced than them.
I'm sure I heard that somewhere. Oh, never mind. It doesn't. Never mind. I don't know where. I'm sure I heard that somewhere. I'll have to talk to Dr. Clark and Drac about that at some point. So,
Like if someone from
Ooh! Here's one for you two while I go and have a quick look around the house quickly, just to make sure everything's alright. From Joshua Santos. If I replace the 88th Imperial Guard Siege Army at Vrax with the entire clone army of the Republic at its strongest, could they breach the Citadel? The clones
No.
will
End of
still
story.
get help. No, the clones will still get help from Titans and Space Marines.
No.
no.
The entire clone army.
Right. I think you're underestimating how big the 88th Siege Army is.
No, we're talking about 10 million clones.
No, right, yeah. You're talking 10 million clones versus far more Krieg.
Yes, I'm aware of that, but there is...
We're actively decreasing the numbers and decreasing their standard weapons.
And you also have to remember, this
So-
is a Krieg siege army.
See-
These have more artillery pieces in a single corps
No, I'm aware of...
In fact,
so,
there's an
than most of the clone army.
so let me...
Right.
So
do you,
let me...
do you want to quickly go around your house, Fleet, and then we'll answer this when you get back, so you can try and do some counterpoints.
I suppose, but I think in terms of given what you've said, I think I can see where you're coming from. So instead of... So I think what he's trying to say is... So I think a better way to answer this question would be go through, given your knowledge of both scenarios and given your knowledge of both forces, how would you use this newly arrived clone force with the weaponry you know they have and the capabilities you know they have? You still have Space Marines and Titans, so you probably still have the Red Scorpions, you still have the Titan Legion that came to help the Imperials. How would you use... I mean, you've got less manpower, but I assume you're still getting replacements, though. How are you?
We've got less manpower
how
and
are you
less,
gonna-
and less actual equipment.
Yeah, how are you gonna do? How are you gonna approach this while I just go away quickly?
You can't take the fortress.
So,
Because Krieg, the
So
Krieg
apparently roll
siege
dice.
army, the Krieg siege army barely takes that.
so assuming they swap things around, this means we're swapping from the Basilisk, the Medusa, and the Imperial Siege Bombard down to the AV-7 artillery piece and the AT-AP. They don't breach that wall. The Ceramite's too strong. Like, I love the clones. I love Star Wars. But the clone weaponry is not even close to the same power as what these fortifications are designed to withstand.
Okay, watch out. A bit of context here. We're talking... This is a fortress that fortress walls shrugs off what in 40k are called... don't they block the tighter version of the Inferno cannons?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a fortress designed to resist orbital bombardment from capital-grade siege cannon.
We're talking. This is a fortress that counter batteried strike cruisers, which even Cadia struggled to do.
Also, apologies, my mic's a bit iffy. My headset decided to die on me, and they don't want to replace it. But so I'm just trying to find exactly because Krieg did a bombardment. I can't remember exactly how long it lasted, but for anyone listening who are familiar with 40k, the Imperial forces decided that it would be too heavy cost of lives to leave the people out during the artillery bombardment. No person was allowed to be outside with full protective equipment for more than 5 minutes because of the sheer volume and sonic pressure of the artillery bombardment. As I recall, they had to swap through something like 18 million artillery barrels during the bombardment of this one attempt to breach the Citadel.
For context, this siege is essentially Space Verdun.
It's worse than that, huh?
Now, going off the idea that the clones get all of their equipment swapped for Imperial equipment,
No, they don't.
you've all of a sudden... Well, then the clones are done for. They can't operate the stuff.
No, the clones get their own equipment.
And
So-
that's just a
Then
massacre
they're still...
fleet.
Then they're still done for. Right, that's basically what I was about to say. On average, you get the clone... So, assuming we get heavy armor, we're getting 80 ATs... Well, ATTEs, sorry. 80 APs and the A6V clone turbo tank are your heaviest armament.
What about the gigantic doom lasers and the arcing artillery pieces the clones have?
Which giant doom laser?
You know, the giant thing with all the legs. The things that get stuck on the bottom of Venators from time to time.
Oh, that is the SPHA-T. Those are artillery pieces. Those aren't going to work very well. And actually, theoretically speaking, let's be generous. Give me just a moment. I need to go and check
And you've also got the
my
artillery.
Imperial handbook because it has some variants.
You've also got the artillery piece. You know, the one in the first episode of the Clone Wars cartoon with that has 4 legs.
That's called the A7V. It's an anti-vehicle cannon. It's incredibly weak. We literally see them not even being able to get through enemy tanks on occasion, Fleet.
Yeah.
No,
And-
no. Where
Yeah,
are
the-
you?
Alright, okay, I just got to give a little bit of context here, fleet. We're talking, they're attacking a fortress, right?
Foxo, I am very, 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 very.
Yeah, I'm not
well-versed.
giving it to you, I'm giving it to chat, because some of these guys aren't 40k nuts.
She's addressing you because it's easiest. Right, there we go. Found it. The SPHA-T is a turbo laser, -I is an ion cannon, C concussion missiles, M for mass driver, or F for thermobaric. The only hope in hell the clones would have here is the thermobaric round. And even then,
Mass driver wouldn't be.
the
Mass drivers could work.
mass driver doesn't have the penetration capability to go through ceramite.
Well,
Especially not those walls.
the
We're
walls,
talking meters thick ceramite.
Well, the walls are ferrocrete, first of all.
No, they're not.
They've also got ceramite. They're ferrocrete and ceramite.
Okay, right, I could just got no doubt of it. They're specifically designed like starport walls. So they're ferrocrete, hollow, ceramite, a layer of
Oh, hello,
adamantine,
Clark.
void space, ferrocrete, and then doing that again.
Well,
Like
Now,
that-
you know, that's
walls.
that's actually something that could make something of a difference. The
Dr. Clark's
electromagnetic
here,
bomb, which is a
everybody.
one-time use thing, might potentially work until you realise, a lot of 40k stuff's analog.
Joshua Santos asked. Joshua Santos, who asked the question, said, "Can we be more generous to the clones? Give them some of their Legends equipment." And
I am giving them their Legends equipment.
Yeah,
I am giving them Legends equipment. I very much like the clones. I literally have a massive army of clone troopers currently staring at me.
Did you buy all the Lego
No.
models then?
Yes, I do, and I also get the ones from China, which are custom-made figures, and they are really good. I could actually take pictures for people if they're interested, but anyway. Acclimators won't work,
Have
CJ.
you seen the Japanese company's Venator? That's
Yes.
like this big.
Clark,
And you
I've
can
got
buy
the
the model.
Clark, I've got the UCS one. I've got the
There's a
500
Ja-
quid Venator.
There's a Japanese one which is about 900 quid.
The only
And it
I can
has
imagine.
everything that should glow glows, and it can even do sound effects and everything sitting there, and you can control it from an app from your phone. So it can suddenly go. You can have it so suddenly someone stands next to it and suddenly starts making noises.
I
So,
do wish
as for-
Drac was here because
Portable
Drac
Death
is a
Star
40k
lasers are
nerd.
later equipment.
Yeah, Drac is a 40k nerd, so he would actually
So,
kind of
the
dig
problem
this
is, Fleet,
question.
we are also 40k nerds. The problem is, Star Wars does not compare to 40k in terms of destructive capability. It's not even close.
In
by
the
the way,
nicest way,
Dr.
Space
Clark,
Marines would wipe out a clone force.
Dr. Clark, are you aware of the Siege of Rax?
Yes.
We're
Aware, yes.
We're talking about replacing the 88th Krieg Siege Army with the entire Grand Army of the Republic from the Clone Wars.
Good luck.
Yeah, that's what that seems to be the consensus. This seems to apparently the guy was generous and gave them still the Space Marine and Titan support. So
that is generous, but the problem is, it's not enough. Right? You know I love the Dark Angels. You know they are my faction of choice.
I will point
out the Dark
out
Angels couldn't do much. They could only get rid of a couple of commanders. The entirety of the other Space Marine force. Iron Wolves are interesting.
I am supposed to challenge you to fisticuffs now.
Oh yeah, you mean the Space Wolves? Yes, we need to fight for glorious honor before our Primarchs.
My faction specifically are the armored group of the Space Wolves, so they're descended from them. So they're called Iron Wolves.
Yeah, you've got all the cool. I like that. I'm trying to do something with my 40k army where I'm doing the Iron Wing for the Dark Angels, where it's all the basically Dark Angels, the old Horus Heresy armor. It's like, yeah, we just kept these because why would we get rid of them?
Yeah, the Fenrisian. It gets quite interesting when you turn up and you basically go, yeah, so what's jumping out? Is it going to be a squad or is it going to be a squad of Fenrisian wolves? What did you see?
Roll the dice, spin the wheel.
I do have a Bjorn to lead my particular group of dreadnoughts. So, yeah, that tends to have an effect. I have a lot of dreadnoughts.
Unfortunately, I've only got 4. Deredeo, Leviathan, Redemptor, and Ballistus. But
I have a friend who specialized in shop clearances, and he got a whole load of them, and he didn't know how much they were, and he just said, "Oh, you collect this stuff. I'll give it to you for a tenner."
Wow.
I went, okay. Here's the £10. Took them, and then I told him how much they were worth.
Funny.
So that explains how I now have 20 dreadnoughts.
Yes, see, indeed, Blood Ravens. But going back to the question for a moment,
can we wrap it?
The clones just can't do it.
Yeah, so basically, the clones can't do it. The clones can't do it. Yeah, there's your answer. The clones can't do it.
Even if we give them orbital support and all sorts.
That's the answer. The clones can't do it. Moving on.
We need the 18 million plus men of the Krieg and the guns.
We've been enough.
Because to briefly summarize it up, you've not got enough men, even if the men are of superior quality. I will say that the clones are better than a standard Krieg's guardsman.
Wow, that's some.
Though they might not be as willing to. Though they might not be willing to sell their lives as dearly, because why would they? They have inferior equipment overall, but it's probably actually faster, admittedly, than the Krieg stuff. But it's not as resilient, it's not as powerful.
Also, the white is
going to stand out. And they're not willing to die.
Yeah, the white's going to stand out.
They're not willing to literally walk into machine gun fire and be slaughtered by the hundreds of thousands to gain a couple of inches that will cause the breach. Which the Krieg did. It's one of the few times Krieg's whole thing of, we are going to sacrifice our lives as dearly as possible.
Mm-hmm. This is very true.
They might use different tactics. The problem is you just don't have the capability.
Yeah.
And also, you can't... If you've got the entire Grand Army of the Republic, that means you're not going to have one of the better generals.
Yes.
Because let's be honest, that means
you might have people fighting each other.
Yeah, you're going to have... If you consider it, you're going to have which the Jedi are going to end up in charge. It's going to be the whole bomb fight.
We weren't even told they had got Jedi.
Well, it's the Grand Army of the Republic. Their generals are the Jedi.
Technically, yes, but they're not actually commissioned members of the Grand Army of the Republic.
Yes, but they are their generals. So in the nicest way, that means they probably got Samuel Jackson's character, whose name escapes me at the moment.
Mace Windu.
Who, let's be honest, is a strategic amoeba.
His strategy choice is, if I run in and hit it real hard...
If Kenobi, if Kenobi and Yoda are in joint overall command, things might not be completely trash.
Nope. It'll actually be worse. Yoda is not a warrior.
No, Yoda is really not. Kenobi, you might have a chance. He actually has an iota of a strategic brain, but there's a reason why Anakin Skywalker could literally walk all over them. It's because he's the only one who is actually half decent as a general. And I'm being generous when I say half decent. but he can still walk over them.
And I'm going to be honest with
It's
you.
basically you're taking people who are trained to be individually super skilled warriors and telling them to command lots of people. Those skills do not translate. You do not take a guy who's just been trained as a fighter pilot, or someone who's just been trained as a fighter pilot, and then go immediately, I'm just going to drop you into squadron command now. No, you have to give them flight leadership. You have to give them all sorts of levels of experience and test them out. And even then, some of the very best pilots never make commanders of a squadron. And it's the same with
Sidious, the Grand Army of the Republic's clones.
Yeah, it just doesn't work.
Yes, I do like those ships would. I hate the Venator in terms of what it's used for, but I love its actual visuals. Yes, that is a cat, CJ. I like my cat, all right.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's also
Right. Moving.
Right, anyway, I think we have answered the question quite thoroughly.
No, I just want to make one point about the comparisons with 40k. That you can't. 40k is everything taken to the extreme. There's most sci-fis you can't put against them and expect to come out well against anything from 40k. Most of the time.
Nope.
Okay, so where were we?
Yeah, point conceded, there is some that can do it. Not looking at you, Zeelyverse. I hate that series.
But that's because Zeely is ludicrous.
But it's supposed to be.
Yes. Give me a second. I'll give you cat pics in a moment.
Darth Sidious asks, what does the ship crew do when their ship is in refit for longer periods of time? Do they get reassigned? Wait out till the ship is ready once again? No, they get reassigned. They don't stay with the ship normally.
They're gone. The ship's decommissioned, so the crew are taken off it and go off and put onto other ships in commission.
Or sent to other duties on shore. What?
Also, actually, Dragon, this is a question I can ask you, because I've been getting mixed reviews on this from my family. Now, the thing is, how the wolves love their power fists. They love their claws and yeah. Do you think I could mount those on a tank?
Yes.
Because I have some spare ones, and I think the tank could do with them as an additional. But I'm working out how to attach them to. I'm thinking sort of making it into sort of things at the front of the tank.
You could make them the sort of. Horus Heresy used to have these basically. Well, they still do. Basically, rams that you can stick on the front of them. The Kratos has got them. You could do something similar to that potentially.
That's what.
Or if you could get your hand on some ballistas, you could actually use them on, because they've now got a new Stabo mech dreadnought.
Ooh. I mean, see, all my dreadnoughts are already pretty heavily armed. Let's be honest. Most of my dreadnoughts, the standard equipment is heavy. Let's say.
The best way a Space Marine army should be.
I don't think a single one of my dreadnoughts comes in at the dreadnought point allowance. Not a single one comes in at the standard point allowance. Everyone has to have special points.
It depends on how many components you actually have, because there is a Space Wolves unique Contemptor Dreadnought body.
Yeah.
Which is, if you have the spare components, you could basically try and mash together some legs and arms for it. But on an actual tank, try and sticking them at the front and act as basically the plows would probably be the best way.
I've already got a couple of dreadnoughts which are like that, which are close enough. That's what they're sort of rolled as. So yeah, this is what I was considering. I have a few extra. I'm thinking for about for the tank. For my command tank, basically the one I use as my lead tank for the for most operations. It needed something to make it more special.
Yeah, the Kratos is the one which is most famous for the big spikes at the front.
Because the Iron Wolves, when they turn up heavy, fast, and with everything already loaded.
Oh boy, that's a loaded question, Brackman. That will make many people very angry. What are people's opinions on Primaris Marines?
I don't mind it.
I personally am okay with them, but we'll wait to get to that.
Yes, gentlemen,
I'm at least going to let Fleet
you
try
are
and get back on track a
disrupting
bit.
my flow. I
Look,
know
all
it's
I'm
random
gonna say
ramblings,
is-
but
They're Space Marines. They all die to
Actually-
Tesla weapons all the same. R/Necron Life.
Okay, Boxo, as the independent person here, have
She's
we
not
been
independent,
interrupting
she'll-
Fleet's flow? Have we been interrupting Fleet's flow, or has Fleet interrupted their own flow?
He interrupted his own flow by leaving and letting me talk about 40k.
Then it's not. Then it's no one's fault but Fleet's.
nope, incorrect. Incorrect, because I am the host. I get to decide what the law is.
Honestly,
We're an
I find-
autocracy.
I found out all the Space
Find your lack of
is
faith
adorable.
disturbing, Fleet.
Yeah, Space Marines are adorable. You just need some fucking immortals with Tesla weapons. Then they all die horribly.
Look, Fleet, as we often said, as autocrats and dictators go, you're far more Mussolini than anything else.
Mm.
In that you claim to be autocratic, but your actual power is incredibly circumspect and limited.
Considering, technically speaking, I can actually serve a mute
did
Fleet, which I'm not going to do, but
I have that
he does
same
not have
power.
unlimited power.
And
I know,
anyway.
but it's the sheer fact that we can do it as well means you are the Mussolini.
Anyway, Knight asks, as Hood was run into the ground materially, what was the condition of Repulse pre-World War II? Dr. Clark, I'm putting this one on you because I don't know.
Actually, Renee was probably in the best condition as she'd been the one most upgraded. But the reason she'd been upgraded when she was because she was in the worst condition. Then they were going to upgrade Hood, and they were going to retire Repulse with the new ships coming into service. The Vanguard's coming to... It was basically the plan prior to the war. So Repulse is in not as bad a condition. It was probably in the least worst condition of the three. But let's be honest, she wasn't that great after a couple of years of war, but still, there is a reason she performs so well in the 4C encounter, and let's be honest, she pretty much... I usually describe her, and I've used this many times, but I'm going to keep using this. It's, if you watch Strictly Come Dancing or Dancing with the Stars, and they usually partner up young male sports stars who have absolutely no rhythm but look, really rippling and really excited to spend a lot of time in the gym and fit, with these slightly more mature in years, but still very, very nice looking and very fit and healthy sort of thing, female dancers who twirl around them like anything in the first few weeks to try and make it look like they can actually dance. Until they either get them past the point where they actually can dance, or they're voted out by the public. Well, basically, at the sinking of 4C, Repulse is twirling around Prince of Wales like anything. She's doing everything. She is doing the ship version of jumping up in the air, doing the splits, and flipping over. She is doing it all to try and dodge being hit, whilst also providing covering fire, and farrantly looking back at Prince of Wales going, "What the friggin' are you doing sitting there?" While Prince of Wales sitting there going, "I am following the latest doctrine, which is we drive straight ahead and we just keep blasting away with our AA and rely on our AA." And it's that kind of scenario.
Well,
and we've all seen it. And the reason I'm not, the reason I'm putting it that way around as I am with the dance partners is usually, let's be honest, in the reverse scenario where you have a male experienced dancer with a female sports star who has no rhythm, all they do is chuck her up in the air and just keep her off the ground as long as they can. We've all seen Strictly Come Dancing enough times to know that's the methodology they approach.
Yep.
You can soon tell if the female dance partner has no rhythm. She spends most of her life in the dance airborne.
Mm-hmm.
And if the male dancer has no rhythm, then the female dancer, spend most of the time twirling all round them, doing everything they can to look as eye-catching as possible and keep everyone's eyes focused on them rather than looking at their partner. And their partner will get comments like, "You are such a great support. You were really reliable standing there, and you kept to the timing, and you led your partner beautifully when all you had to do was literally stick your hand out as she twirled about a mazillion times."
Dr. Clark, you've made the comparison. Can I move on, please?
Look, all I'm hearing from this, if a woman turns herself into a Beyblade while dancing with you, you can't dance.
Yes!
Foxo, please, for the love of God.
That is correct, Foxo.
Anyway, moving swiftly on, before I lose what little is left of my sanity, again, for the 4th time in a row.
You have sanity?
It comes
Why
and
do you
goes.
have such...
It comes and goes.
Why do you have such an overrated thing?
Lee, your insanity is an alpha marine.
Silence.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Anyway. What if... I hyperinflated my MC economy asks, what if Arizona did not explode violently but a B turret was launched clear out of its barbette? To quote myself, Arizona does not explode violently, but her B turret is launched clear out of her barbette. That's what happens. But your question kind of answers itself. You've asked that rare thing, a self-answering question. Congratulations. Task failed successfully. Dr. Clark, don't do that, because I know what that means. It means you've got something to say.
I was about to say, you've got Clark looking at you in a strange way, Fleet, so have fun.
Oh, go on.
The thing is, if the turret goes up, this is what I was mentioning, people think the turret goes up and nothing happens to the rest of the ship, but if the turret goes up, usually a lot of stuff goes down. And often you find either it breaks the back of the ship, breaks the keel, or it busts up other hulls, because it also, quite a lot of force goes down. Because, let's be honest, the turret is quite a heavy object. To make it go airborne requires a lot of force, and if anyone's ever seen a rocket taking off, and seen the amount of force that has to come down before the rocket starts to take off, imagine what it's like when you're dealing with a turret which is not designed to fly, and it's not in any way at all aerodynamic. So there's a lot of force which goes down first, so that it doesn't matter. At the moment your turret's going up, your ship's going down. This is why I find a UAD so funny when they the turret. You see the turrets join the space program, and the ship's still afloat.
What you'll probably see in Arizona's case is if the magazine goes up without destroying the ship fully, probably you'll see the front bit gone. Yeah, I know it's a real big if, but trying to follow
the front fell off.
What you probably see is the entire front of the ship's just gone.
Now I must stress, the front
and
is
she's
not
probably sunken port.
The front is not usually supposed to fall off. I must stress that thoroughly. The front does not normally fall off.
So why did it fall off then?
Well, in this particular case, it fell off.
But why did it fall off?
Because it did.
I'm glad you know exactly the same bit I'm referring to.
Yep. Okay, so next question is from YouTube, which is another one from Knight. If you gave the British in late 1946 all models of de Havilland Sea Venom, Hawker Sea Hawk, and de Havilland Sea Vixen, which one would the RN start with? Simple, the Sea Venom. Because it's...
Sorry, which year is this?
In late 1946, all the models of the Sea Venom, Hawker Sea Hawk, and de Havilland Sea Vixen, which one would the RN start with? The Sea Venom, because it's closest to what they currently know, and they can train it.
All models? Would it be the Sea Hawk if it's all models?
Yeah, no. The same. They would use the Sea Venom because the Sea Vampire has officially entered service by 46. And the Venom is very similar to the Vampire. So they would be able to go, we roughly know how this one works.
It also
Gloucester,
comes with radar.
like, they have the design over there.
It's,
Sea Vixen's definitely the one they would go to last, because what is all of this?
Also, why no gun?
Big boom.
Next is from Chris, and I've been waiting for this one, because I get to actually debunk. Is it true that the Qing Shell's gunpowder at the Yalu River was replaced with sand by the Germans? Domestic sources in China always claim this. Is this true? No. This is something that we've seen in the last 40 to 50 years by the Communist Chinese government to attempt to whitewash a lot of their military failures. by blaming foreign powers for things going wrong, when in fact the failures of ammunition at Yellow Sea was because Chinese officials had removed gunpowder from shells and replaced warheads with concrete, not the Germans. And even then, it wasn't nearly as widespread as the as some of the accounts like to claim. Because thing is, if the gunpowder in the Chinese shells was replaced, why was it reported by both sides that both Chinese ironclads were firing their main batteries for most of the battle without pause? It makes no sense. If a large chunk of their ammunition just couldn't be fired, how were they firing it?
Well, I don't know. It's the People's Will of the People's Communist Party.
I think Fleets. The trouble is there. You're trying to apply logic to propaganda.
Oh no, I'm aware of that.
We've been over this before.
I'm aware of that, but I'm debunking it. I am debunking it.
Yes, but then you ask a question based on it.
Yes, a question designed to debunk it.
Okay.
I think.
I'll let you think that.
Well,
shall we move on before Fleet figures things out?
Yeah, it'd be more fun.
Look, Fleet just keep rubbing those adorable little brain cells together. You'll figure it out eventually.
Okay. Where are we? That's a
YouTube
question.
He is going to get to the point where he's going to try and kill us all, isn't he?
He's
tried. He's failed.
I am quite a long way from him. He'd have to actually find Cornwall.
Do you have any idea how long it's been since I've removed a spine?
Yeah, but the thing is, I know he won't be able to deal with me because due to Newcastle being very willing to kill anyone who tries to come here, good luck.
Wait, I'm sorry, Cornwall. He won't pass the inbredness check to get into Cornwall.
Knight6831 asks, if you change the size of the Iron Duke class, why do you not have to change the size of the Littoral in HMS Eagle? I don't follow what you mean there, Knight. If you change the size... The question is, verbatim, I will quote, if you change the size of the Iron Duke class, why do you not have to change the size of Littoral in HMS Eagle?
Principally because those two are ordered by the Chilean government, they're not ordered by the Royal Navy. So if you're changing the Royal Navy's design patterns to change their designs, doesn't necessarily follow that the Chileans will change their order because they're already maxing out their currency as it is when they're making those orders. So yeah, they might want a bigger ship, but they might not be able to afford a bigger ship. It could also, in a Brazil scenario. So this is one of the things you can't always go with a run of construction and go, well, yes, if the British are changing all their designs and are making their designs slightly bigger, and I'm fairly sure this comes from one of the questions which we were asked yesterday, which was, what happens if the Dreadnoughts are a slightly bigger design, if they go for the something closer to a Hercules. Yes. So if they're bigger, then it makes all the others will be successfully bigger, but it doesn't necessarily change the ones which are built in British yards of foreign countries. It might do, but it doesn't necessarily change it. It might change the Congos. We don't know.
Oh!
I've seen the Brazilians want to do a lot of impressive stuff, but they can't.
If the Royal Navy adopted, let's say, for Dreadnought, let's say she was instead 5 triple turrets, all mounted centrally with super firing B and X positions. And so she had 15 12-inch guns. Do the Congos end up with 15 triple turrets and 15-inch guns? Because remember, the British are experimenting with triple turrets at that time. As I've discussed before, when I was talking about what's the maximum Dreadnought the British could have built at the time when they built Dreadnought. Well, if they'd gone the same policy as they did with the Queen Elizabeth class, they could quite easily have gone for a 14-inch gun, because Ellswick Ordnance Company has a 14-inch 45. They've got him built. They've got correction, and they've got Trevicus have got a triple turret, and you've got super firing experiments already going on around the world. So you could have gone for a 14-inch gun Dreadnought with other things, but they wouldn't have been built as quickly Because one of the reasons why Dreadnought was built as quickly as she was they used twin turrets with a set of the same pattern design as the Lord Nelsons, which allowed them to build her quickly. And the reason they wanted to build it quickly was they wanted to seize the advantage and get in first before everyone else. There was value to being first. And if you'd gone for something slightly bigger, it would have taken longer, and you might not have been first. You would have immediately set the world on fire by going, we've got something with 15, 14-inch guns, what have the rest of you got? Oh, and by the way, by the time we work this out, actually it's going to end up being a 24-knot ship, not a 21-knot ship, because with the boiler and capabilities of boilers increasing at a time, etc., you probably would have ended up going for a 24-knot ship rather than a 21-knot ship, and that would have made things even more fun. Because that would have meant that the first generation of German counterparts would have had to use British turbines if they wanted to get to 24 knots and wanted to maintain it. And the Germans and quite a lot of nations would have suddenly had to go look down the triple turret route. Or they'd have gone with the twin turret route and been outclassed from the get-go. Because, and again, for the Germans, the thing is, they can say their 11-inch gun equates to a British 12-inch gun. Can they say their 11-inch gun equates to a British 14-inch gun? Probably not, because it's just not going to look like it, so they're probably going to have to do some work and develop their own gun. And if you're starting off on 14 inches for the British Dreadnought, what happens with the American ships? What happens with everyone else? And it gets very, very interesting. But yes, Ellswick's 14-inch gun, of course, is the original starting of the British 14-inch gun development, which, of course, gets seen sighting Congos and eventually King George V in World War II. Did I bore everyone completely, Dan? I do apologise.
Nope. I just keep muting my mic because I'm on my phone because my headset's died.
Ha! Hello.
Ah.
Hello, folks. It's me. I'm back.
And Flea wasn't even listening, apparently.
Look, I had to go and deal with something.
But no, I mean, but your point makes entire sense because it just balloons, surely. Like as soon as you change, like there's a possibility they might have wanted to do changes, but it's not really something we can guess, surely.
So Knight 681 says, so really HMS Eagle will not change her sides if I'm Duke, and I bet you saw my comment on yesterday's brew ships. I don't know what Knight, if you want me to...
Doesn't Knight make a lot of comments on brew ships?
Yes, if you want me to understand, you need to give me context. I do not have a photographic memory.
Like, this isn't... Like, not saying anything against you, Knight, just from what I've heard, you make a lot of comments, so Fleet needs a bit of help finding things.
I need context. I do not... I need the context. You gotta give me the context. I'm not good with context.
Don't worry, I remembered.
Oh no, wait! I've not missed one. Oh, never mind. I'm actually all right. I've not missed one. Hey, or have I?
I don't know. Since I had to arrive late, I've been trying to quickly fill up the questions, and I think I vaguely know where we are. But some of the questions have sort of got intermingled to a degree.
Oh, it was a YouTube question. Now it's a
Discord.
Yes. AMC Woods M6 asks, a modern US Expeditionary Strike Group and 2 destroyer squadrons are sent back in time just before the Guadalcanal... Oh, it's one of these. Are sent back in time just before the Guadalcanal campaign with enough fuel, ammunition, and food for 6 months of combat operations. How does the campaign go, and how much damage are they able to do with the IGN? With 6 months of
World War II ends in 6 months.
Yeah, why is this even a question?
They sink the entire... Right, if they actively want to fight... Does anyone know the anime, I think it's Zaipangu or whatever?
Yeah, but you've sent...
Where the whole thing of a modern destroyer chooses not to and get involved?
Yes.
What did they choose to get involved?
Oh, no, yeah, the thing is...
Well,
this is 2 destroyer squadrons and a US Expeditionary Strike Group.
The entire IGN sunk.
The Guadalcanal campaign's over in 2 days, the entire IGN sunk in 4 days, and Tokyo is being bombed within 6.
Yep.
And then once Japan's defeated in 2 months, they then go zipping off around the world to Europe and do the same thing to Germany and Italy.
Well, if they can agree, and I don't think they do, because the US will go, right, we're done.
No,
they might not want to send them. I'm not sure they'll want to send them over to Europe necessarily.
They're fighting a war.
Oh no, they'll want to send them over purely to show the world they've done it.
And
I guess fair. I forgot to account for the American.
And also,
hell yeah, America sort of.
And also,
nonsense.
more to the point, you're giving modern US service people a chance to fight the actual fucking Nazis. Sorry, wait, it's my channel. I can say that the actual fucking Nazis.
Yeah. This is the joy of having me along here. You suddenly you think for a second you can't say these things, but then you remember it's your channel. You can.
It's mine. It's mine. So next is a YouTube question.
Very quick and simple.
I've been waiting for this one. Joshua Santos. Oh, I think we already answered that. Yeah, we did that.
Which one's that?
So there we go. So we did. That's all related to the other ones who've done that. 1981 asks, as Dr. Clark is here, would Fleet of Oceans be wrong or inaccurate to say the Canarius class of what the county class would be without the treaty? I would like to point out, before Dr. Clark eviscerates me, that what I said is the Canarius class is what you get when you build a county outside of the treaty limits, with a few extra bells and whistles thrown in.
Pretty much, but honestly, the counties the British would not have built the counties under any circumstance other than treaties.
Yeah, exactly. Like
the British experience of the 7.5-inch gun of the Hawkins was we don't like it. They would have gone to a 9.2-inch gun for any equivalent of a heavy cruiser.
Oh, completely.
They would never have gone for an 8-inch.
Absolutely.
The main debate is whether the British would have ever gone to a 12-inch gun or whether they just kept having more 9.2-inch guns.
Oh yeah.
They might have gone with the same. You see, you have to remember the same policy as they end up going with a 6-inch gun.
Yeah.
Is they might go, well, hang on, rate of fire, the 9.2-inch gun is better, and cruiser engagement ranges, what are they? Does the 12-inch gun make sense?
Yeah.
Because the British actually negotiate by treaty in the late 1930s that they're able, with the Second London Naval Treaty and the First London Naval Treaty, they are allowed more light cruisers and 6-inch cruisers than they are supposed to proportionally by sacrificing heavy cruisers. And it's purely because they look at the stats and they go, engagement ranges are this. Okay, in a pre-radar world, considering the amount of armor any of us can carry, even with slight modifications, there is no real advantage in the 8-inch because the sheer volume of shells guarantees more hits, pretty much to a 6-inch gun with 6-inch armed ship with more because it's going to be able to carry more guns, fire at a faster rate, so it's going to have more shells in the air. Which means if it's got the same level of accuracy as the 8-inch gun, it's going to achieve far more hits, which is going to achieve a mission kill earlier, which is probably then going to lead to a kill.
Yeah, completely.
And that's the thing. That's the whole British idea. So if you've got the similar scenario where people are going, oh, I want a 12-inch cruiser, the British will probably be going, no, we'll have a 9.2-inch. That'll do.
Oh,
Long barrel 9.2-inch.
Oh, yeah, completely. But, so, the thing that I want to clarify is, so, like I said, it wasn't...
Why are you calling out to your Glutamus Maximus?
What?
Why are you calling out to your Glutamus Maximus?
I said clarify.
You said but.
Oh, very funny. Hardy ha.
What, are you not familiar with your Latin, Fleet?
Look, I did Latin for 2 years in high school. I don't remember much, if anything. I remember half. Like I said, I don't speak much, if any, Latin. So I have no idea what you just said.
Can you say I'm stuffing my face with pasta right now?
I speak more Klingon than I do Latin. Honestly, I probably speak more Klingon than I do French, German, or Latin.
This does not surprise me.
Why do you even want to speak French? It's like the worst language.
Agreed, but...
Yeah.
Unfortunately, occasionally you get forced to do so.
Oh, that reminds me, I've been down a rabbit hole recently.
Oh, whack.
Okay, do you know a fun fact? Everyone's heard of the word "the," right?
Yeah. Foxo, no.
In written English,
oh, for God's
you
sake.
can thank the Normans for that.
It doesn't surprise me in any way.
Because for 200 years, written English essentially ceased to exist. Which means "the," which was conversational English held over from Celtic and the Celtic languages, which have something similar, and Germanic doesn't.
Yes.
Therefore, you can blame the Normans. Because during the 13th and 14th century, when written English is re-emerging, they used spoken English as a template. Which is why English is so fucked.
Hey, well done.
It gets even more fun when you realise most of the grammar and most of those things which we use are actually instructions to actors conceived by playwrights.
Yes. And
so
then
that's why most of our grammar comes from, and grammar and grammatical rules come from Chaucer and Shakespeare and the playwrights copying them at a time, because they were basically putting in grammar like full stops so that their actors would do what they were telling them to do. They were literally, grammar was instructions to actors. Pause. Comma. Basically.
It's also why there's some really weird spellings in English. Because when the printing press was first...
All right.
Translation, and the first use of English
I have questions.
Yeah, let me finish. The first sort of...
To be fair, he's got a lot of questions to go through
text
still.
in English was done by Dutch print operators, and they didn't speak English. So it's a lot of English words are Dutch interpretation of how the English should be spelled, which is why they're spelled so weirdly.
So what I'm hearing is we can legally blame the Dutch for the English language being awkward.
Yeah.
Yes. But there again, we spent the last few centuries blaming the French and the Dutch for pretty much everything. It's quite easy. The Dutch really don't care.
Yeah, but the French deserve it.
To be fair, we've also done a fair bit of stuff to the French.
No.
Okay.
The only reason we did stuff to the French because the French invaded and made us.
Stop! I'm putting my foot down. I have stuff to get through.
I believe it's. I think you've just done a what's it called? YouTube, didn't you? So I believe now it's Discord.
Yes, now it is Discord. I'm gonna really try and burn through these questions can we try and keep tangents to a minimum if possible, please?
Implausible.
No. Right. Okay.
Chanella?
Moving swiftly onwards. What if the Dreadnought scrapped after World War I was distributed across the Dominions, i.e. Canada, Australia, and India instead, and I guess sold off to South America
I think
too?
you missed a few there.
No, I didn't.
Or that one posted twice. Anyway, go on.
So the Dominions don't want them. First of all, they're old. They've seen plenty of war service, and they can't stand up to the modern vessels coming down the line from other navies. Secondly, the South Americans don't want them because they have no money for them, and also they don't need them really because an equilibrium has been established, and everyone in South America is happy with that. Thirdly, the British want to scrap them because, well, they're the 12-inch dreadnoughts, and the 13.5-inch dreadnoughts don't start going until Washington and the new builds of capital ships. So you're left in a weird situation where nobody wants them, nobody needs them, and if for some reason the Dominions decide they're going to have 12-inch or 13.5-inch battleships for some reason, that's going to make the Washington Naval Treaty weighted heavily in the US's favour, because the US will probably demand the Dominions and Britain still be counted as one, which is going to deny Britain a large modern battle fleet and is instead going to be left with a geriatric collection of ships parcelled out to its dominions.
Well, I would assume that Britain accepts the US getting the advantage, though there's a lot of things that occur there.
Yes, the conference would be incredibly forthright.
That circumstance, if the Dominions wanted that level of force, at a certain point you can't count them as you can't count them as part of the group. You have to count them as their own individual powers. And at a certain point, the Americans might try and request that, because they the Washington Naval Treaty. The British use the Washington Naval Treaty as a good excuse to get out of the Anglo-Japanese Treaty, because whilst Japan's been a good ally and Britain's was a good ally to Japan, they are now looking at them and going, hang on, you're getting a bit nuts. We think we need to distance ourselves from you. So the treaty provides good cover for that, so they accede to that. So some people sometimes use that as in the case of this scenario, saying, well, Britain would then accede to the Americans, demanding they break up the British Empire. But actually, I think that would be pushing it too much, and that would cause the Washington Naval Treaty to break down. So I think actually those scenarios, any scenario where the Dominions demand those ships and want those ships for their safety, ends up with the Washington Treaty not happening, or not happening as it did historically in any way.
That's a possibility.
It could end up becoming a treaty more like the Second London Naval Treaty, where you have a limit on the size of ships you can build, but not the quantities.
that would make more sense within this scenario.
But think about that. That could be a scenario where you could end up with the limit for destroyers being 1,200 tons.
Yeah.
Because think about how big the average destroyer is in 1918.
Yeah.
Does that mean no tribals?
1920. That means no anything. There is not a single destroyer that is new build from the 1930s onwards that would fit that criteria.
Yeah, even the British A-class destroyer, which is built at that period, is too big all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Is no tribals is immediately sad.
Yeah.
So next is a YouTube question, which is Dr. Clark. If the South American powers could have formed them, how come there are so many mutinies in each of these South American battleships' careers? Plus, they spend a lot of time in reserve, and some of them are in poor shape. Well, most of the a larger share of the mutinies than you would expect belong to the Brazilian Navy, because the Brazilian Navy did not treat its enlisted personnel very well. In fact, that's probably an under.
The Brazilian Navy is the Belgium Empire of navies in their treatment of their personnel.
Yes, there's a reason.
In fact, that's almost being rude about the Belgian Empire. It's not quite, but it's coming close.
Yeah, it's. A lot of the other mutinies in the other battleships were something that the major navies had, were for reasons that the major navies had mutinies. Usually pay or time off or things like that. Which the major navies had in this period as well. For example, you had the Great Mutiny in the Royal Navy during the interwar period. So
yes, and you have to remember, battleships are always more at risk of mutinying than pretty much any other ship, because the sheer quantity of crew and personnel you have aboard.
Yeah.
And the fact is that often, how do I put this, if you're going to shove problematic crew, where do you shove them? Do you shove them in a destroyer, which is a small crew, and they can cause a lot of problems? Or do you shove them in a battleship where you've got a large number of people who can watch them? Trouble is, you end up with enough bad apples, and a bad enough situation where the people who you usually rely on to watch them are annoyed, and then you have problems. Which is also why it tends to be cruisers on home defense and battleships which do have the mutinies. Cruisers on foreign stations, destroyers, smaller ships don't tend to have the same mutinies. Again, the small ship dynamic is different. The small ship dynamic, if there's a mutiny in a small ship, it's usually far more due to a specific officer or being an absolute than it is anything else. Because in a smaller ship, it wouldn't be unusual for maybe the captain to sit down on a destroyer, let's say, the person who's acting as a captain, to sit down and with the crew who are annoyed about their pay and go, "What's the problem, mates? Tell me." And then write a letter and say they're going to write a letter. And so the crew would not wish to... They know that officer is going to do their best to try and act on their behalf, so they will not wish to embarrass that officer by doing that, by causing a mutiny, because they know that officer is acting on their behalf. But on a battleship, what chance does the captain have of doing that? He's relying on his junior officers, and it only takes one of them being a prat and going, "Oh, the sailors, they will do what they're told because they're sailors." In a nicest way, you can have some people, they'll go the right way through officer training, you'll never detect that, and the moment they have the rank and they're actually in charge, suddenly they start acting like that as a junior lieutenant.
Now, what we've been discussing... Sorry, go on.
Then you try and weed them out as quickly as you frickin' can, but there's only so fast you can actually do it.
Yeah, what we've been talking about currently is how things function in normal navies. The Brazilian Navy was...
We're trying to avoid discussing what the Brazilian Navy does, because the Brazilian Navy is...
It was horrific. It was horrific.
Yeah.
Like, it took it being gutted and then rebuilt from the bottom up to fix it.
About twice over.
There's a reason why it got so bad that a Brazilian battleship fired in a Brazilian city, and the sailors were still seen as the sympathetic ones by the Brazilian populace.
Yes.
Now, in regards to the other South American dreadnoughts, the Minas Gerais class decayed really quickly. Aggressively so.
Basically, because you buy some really cool dreadnoughts, you do not buy the infrastructure to maintain them.
The Argentinians and Chileans do a far better job with their ships. So much so that both the Rivadavias and the Almirante Latorre are still basic level combat capable at the outbreak of the Second World War. And by that I mean they can sail, they can fire their guns, and they still have fire control to direct those guns.
Well, actually, the Almirante Latorre is pretty much considered capable of taking out both the Argentinian ones by both British, American, and I think who else's intelligence report that I read? It was the Italians or some reason had an intelligence report, and they all reckoned the Chileans actually had fire control, actually were trained, and it could win a fight against the other dreadnoughts without any trouble.
Yeah, and the part of the reason for that is that by 1939, you are seeing that it's basically one of the reasons they say that is because the Argentines are basically flip-flopping. What they'll do is they'll take one of the battleships down for repairs, strip it of parts, repair those parts, the other one will be running, and then that one will go down for repairs, they'll strip that one of parts to fully refurbish them, then the other one will be running, and the Argentines flip-flop with them from about the mid-30s up until they're decommissioned. So Rivadavia will run, then Moreno will run, then Rivadavia will run. And this is the reason why they say it could beat both of them, because if the Chileans came for a scrap, they'd only be met with one. Although it is important to bear in mind that the Chileans' real worry wasn't the Argentine battleship, it's the pair of modern cruisers, along with the third modern cruiser that arrives just prior to the outbreak of the Second World War. So you've got a pair of modern heavy cruisers, although they are smaller ones, and a modern light cruiser, plus a quartet of modern destroyers. That's what makes the Argentine Navy dangerous, or the most dangerous of the fleets, in the run-up to the Second World War. They actually have a full set of tools. They've got a capital unit, 2 fast cruisers, a training ship to keep all their crews good, which is also a very good light cruiser, some destroyers that aren't complete rubbish, and some submarines that aren't complete rubbish.
To be fair, that training cruiser very nearly became an extra Royal Navy cruiser in World War II.
Nearly, but look at the Argentinians nicked off with it.
Well, the La Argentina.
Yeah. Yes. If it had been in the UK ports for about another week, it probably would have been compulsory purchase by the British government.
Luckily, though, the Argentinians remembered what happened to ships when wars were about to break out and went, "I'm sorry, we're going. Just give me the ski trials. Goodbye."
Quite literally, yeah.
Which was actually
sea trials. Oh, we don't need those. We do not need these sea trials. We just need to get going. They're tied.
They did run those trials, though, when she did get down to Argentina, I believe. Which proved just that she was a very good ship.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
the La Argentina design in general is a very good design for what it is.
So...
It's an Arethusa with town-class turrets. Yes, it's great.
Chris asks,
if only we had been able to design them a bit earlier, it could have been quite useful.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, it is worth bearing in mind that Argentina's design on the tonnage that she uses made possible by improvements in machinery and armor plating that weren't available when you're designing the Arethusas, like 10 years prior.
Potentially, but you'd also be able to give up the training room space. Argentina does have a lot of training room space that you could use the volume for something else.
Yes, but it wouldn't buy you enough tonnage to get...
I'm not saying tonnage-wise, I'm saying internal volume-wise you can use it for other stuff.
Oh yeah, completely, but I'm more referring to building them instead of the Arethusas. It doesn't really work because the technology isn't there.
No. You could build them instead of the Crown Colonies.
Yeah, you could do, but the Crown Colonies are just chunky, better, bigger ships. Chris asks, what if, say, HMS Australia or New Zealand modernized in World War II, what would she do? We've had this question. I think, wow, this is the first time I've had this question. I know you've had it. I know Drax had it. This is the first time I've ever had it. You're basically talking about a ship that it depends entirely on how it's modernized. If it's a warm-over modernization with some boiler replacements to keep it running, some machinery reworking to keep it running, not much increase in speed, a token AA battery, basic fire control refit, you're basically looking at a ship that's useful for convoy escort, shore bombardment, and not much else. If you're talking about a ship that's thoroughly refitted, perhaps with the turrets rearranged. Yes. Especially by thorough, I mean if you go spending that much money, you may as well rearrange the turrets to give you. If you want to really be extreme, I don't think this is viable. A 8-gun, or more accurately, probably more likely a 6-gun broadside, of 12-inch guns, and then use the extra space for a dual-purpose 4-inch battery, replacing your 6-inch casemate guns and a better anti-aircraft battery. And then you basically go into the engine rooms, take a hatchet to the thing, and then rebuild the engine rooms with a completely reworked set of boilers and turbines. And maybe, if you really want to push the boat out, do in Italy and perhaps refine the hull lines a bit. What you're talking about then is the perfect Panzerschiff killer. 6, maybe 8 12-inch guns, 30, 31 knots.
What are you looking at?
Capable of roaming the high seas. You're basically looking at a ship that is basically the Royal Navy's answer to, German Panzerschiff or heavy cruisers at sea. Bonk! She may also be deployed to Abdicom, possibly. Depending on how that war goes. Depending on how that goes.
This ship just screams "why" to me, though.
Oh no! It's
You're lucky, Fleet. I can't find it in the cursed document.
Oh no!
It's not a modernized version of it.
I'm glad of that. Oh no, Foxo, it is. It's incredibly cursed. It makes no sense. But if they chose to, that's how she would be used.
But battle cruiser exists. Why?
You could probably stick a hell of a lot of 40 mils on her, though.
Yes, but Foxo, again, as I've said, the why doesn't matter. We've answered the how, we've answered the what. We don't have to answer the why. Next question is from YouTube, which is Joshua Santos, who asks, what is the spaceship in the thumbnail? Looks like a mixture of the Star Blazers Dreadnought and the Arcadia. That is the battleship New Nautilus from the anime Nadia Secret of Blue Water. It's one of several Fleet Easter eggs in my icon for Ramblings. There are several other Easter eggs in the icon for Ramblings. I'll give a Ramblings question to anyone who can figure out what they are. No spoilers from the panel, please. A guaranteed Ramblings question next week to anyone who can figure out. Yes. So that was related to that. We talked about that in regards to that. Chris, this thing image here, which is of a very somewhat cursed destroyer, has three. No, I haven't. Has 3 dual-purpose 8-inch guns and 15 torpedoes. Is it a destroyer or a heavy cruiser? It's whatever the Navy says it is. At that point, it's whatever the Navy in question decides that ship is used for is what it is. Because at that point, you're in the realm of a ship that can do a few different things, and it's basically I
was right. You did miss one.
It's up to the Navy. No, I haven't missed one.
What do you think of the de Havilland Comet, and by extension the Great Air Race? It's literally right above that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, whoops.
Well, technically speaking, then there's also the Would the UK... Then I'm guessing this is off the whole Canadian QE one, but...
Yeah, we already answered that one.
Yeah.
We already talked about that.
But, yeah, you missed it.
Okay.
I knew it!
Okay, what do you think of the de Havilland Comet, and by extension the Great Air Race? I think the de Havilland Comet's an interesting aircraft, and the Great Air Race was a great way to push forwards the needs of the aviation industry without what, how would I put this gently, without starting a war. But aside from that, I think it is great that she is still flying, but I don't really have anything else to say on the Great Air Race and the aircraft involved in it. It's not really an area with which I'm very familiar, apart from surface level knowledge.
It's proof that the de Havilland English Electric merger should have gone through.
Mm-hmm.
So
I have a very happy poodle who's currently scorching my chest and stomach, which is why I'm not saying much.
yes, I know, I can see.
We can see.
The boy.
It seems very happy.
It is the boy.
He fundamentally believes he's a light, fluffy, woolly dog.
He is not a light, fluffy, woolly dog. Okay.
This sounds like my cat, who thinks it's a very light, fluffy cat.
Okay.
It has a lot of fluff, which adds to the weight.
You know, I find it adorable that you don't think it's small, because my dog's 80 kilos.
Stephen Mayer asks
He's a
on
big
YouTube.
boy.
what would be the best chemical to get rid of 40k orc spores IRL? Or do we need Boom Boom Dan for this one? Oh no, you just burn them.
There isn't.
Fire.
No.
You just
Yeah,
burn.
flamethrowers, you bet. Try and make sure fire will work, but beyond that... Orc spores are
Nuclear
resistant to fire.
weapons.
No, nuclear weapons just
Dettol.
spread them.
Dettol might work, potentially, but
Dettol.
I feel they
Bug
would
spray.
adapt.
Bug spray.
No. They tried that on the Tyranids, didn't work.
Yeah, but
But
the
it-
orcs are not Tyranids, thankfully.
But nuclear weapons
No.
did work in one of the guard books, Dragon.
What you would need is an antifungal agent, in particular. So something that's like 99% antifungal.
Dettol.
Yeah, I do think
Just-
like probably one of the best chemicals to use it.
Orcs
No,
are
but it
fundamentally
will.
mushrooms.
Okay, so
Yeah.
next question. I don't want anyone else to say anything because I'm going to read it out and then give a proclamation, and you'll all understand why. AMC Woods asks, what if the entire modern US Navy with crew, ammunition and fuel went back in time to 1965 during the Vietnam War? How does the air and naval part of the war go if they're actually allowed to fight the war and aren't Riker managed by Rob McNamara and LBJ? And what is the Soviet and PRC reaction to such a powerful force that the US and Western Bloc now has? I'm sorry, but no. No. You've literally well, first of all, the Vietnam War will probably... I can't say how the US would actually... If the US forces would get involved. If they do, it's over in 5 minutes because North Vietnam is just gone. And the Soviet and PRC reaction is probably utter panic. Well, the PRC don't care because they aren't a naval power at this point, and aren't bothered about their navy at this point. The Soviets are just sat
But
crying
they
into
are a
their
nuclear
hands.
power, and if that's in the entire American fleet, then I presume all their boomers go there back as well, and all their Seawolves and Virginias. So
Yes.
in the nicest way, the sheer amount of firepower the US Navy has gained is seen in F-35Cs, and let's be honest, an F-35C or an F-35B, let alone an F-35C, would absolutely would be able to basically party over the Soviet Union at that point, and no one in the Soviet Union couldn't do anything about it. They would not know it's there. You could fly an entire squadron the entire length of the Soviet Union, and they never know about them.
The problem we've got with that question
In that
is
period.
the problem we've got with that question is beyond North Vietnam not existing by basically removing its entire command and control infrastructure and everything else besides. That's basically all I can say. Beyond that point, there's no telling what the Soviets and the
What was
Chinese
the
will
whole
do.
big thing in the Vietnam War that they couldn't actually get the command infrastructure located properly?
Yeah, that's no longer an issue given the sheer amount of OPSEC and reconnaissance assets the USN can now bring to the table.
And let's be honest, beyond that, you've got the fact that the US Navy personnel and most US Armed Forces personnel these days are history obsessives who have oodles and oodles of history books aboard their ships. Seriously, you're going to tell me not one of them is going to have a book which has the entire maps of the North Vietnamese positions and Viet Cong positions from the Vietnam War with them?
Yeah, possibly.
Potentially.
So, possibly, potentially, we all know that's going to be the case. We all know there's going to be at least one of them who's going to have that book with them.
I have to hedge sometimes, Dr. Clark. Occasionally.
You have to hedge on that one. In a nice way, the biggest problem people are going to have with that fleet turning up is the fact that is the history lessons they're going to theoretically learn about still dealing with things like North Korea going on, and the temptation to use that fleet to try and fix those problems before they become ongoing ones. And the effect it's going to have on the space race. Because it's going to make the space race even more important, because if you can get GPS, you're now going to know, if you can get something like GPS working, you can make that fleet, you can make the US Armed Forces absolutely invincible.
Yep, basically.
And suddenly the race is going to be for GPS, as far as the US government's going to be concerned.
Okay, so next is a YouTube question. Knight says, so HMS Eagle will not change her size if Iron Duke changes, and I found Knight's comment. He's basically done calculations on the various sizes and weights of Royal Navy capital ships.
Yes.
Which makes no sense. Because...
Fleet cannot enter math?
No, that's not what I mean. As in... the ships are not just going to linearly grow year on year. That's not how battleship design works in some cases. The QEs are not going to be automatically the QEs are not going to be automatically bigger ships because the first dreadnoughts were bigger ships.
Well, actually, no. Think about it this way. Let's go back to my earlier discussion. If HMS Dreadnought is a 15, 14-inch gun ship, then the Orions, what are they? 15.5-inch guns or 16-inch guns? In which case,
these were his calculations based on Neptune.
Yes, I know, but I'm giving the example. Then, in a nicest way, if you're talking about jump from 15, 14-inch guns to 15, let's say 16-inch guns, that's quite a big size jump for the capital ship. But then let's consider what HMS Queen Elizabeth would be. What's the next jump? If you go jumping up 2 inches at a time, which the British didn't, but let's go on 15.5 inches, a very weird figure to build for a gun. You're not going to do that, so it's probably going to. So the next logical jump for the Queen Elizabeth class would be 18-inch guns. So something which is going to have 15, 18-inch guns versus something which carried 15-inch guns, the size difference is astronomical. So there is no linear progression; it's cumulative. Once you started, it's going to do that. It's So that's where it doesn't really sort of work out those sort of analysis.
Things will get bigger, but we can't really say what, how, why.
Because also there's a reason why it started out bigger. So let's be honest. Let's say Dreadnought does start out bigger. Why does she start out bigger? What's the reason?
Yeah, is
it because the Germans have produced a really big, really large, a number of really large pre-Dreadnought style, Sovereign style battleships? And how big are they? How capable are they? Is it because someone else produced something which is a semi-Dreadnought that's quite big? What's the reason for it? Because why have they gone for a bit? And that's going to then affect what class comes next. Because again, if someone's building a lot of these large semi-Dreadnoughts, then the British, instead of building the Invincibles, might build, instead of doing what they did historically, might build an entire set of 4 Dreadnoughts, or 6 Dreadnoughts, or 8 Dreadnoughts.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's not just it's like you can't a lot of the you can't just change one thing in isolation. It doesn't. Well, you can change one. You can, but it removes the reality of the situation if you do.
It's like whenever I'm asked alternate histories by patrons, I have to come with it for me to do it. I have to be able to come with a legitimate backstory where it could happen. And sometimes, even some of these backstories, I do have to say they are absolutely threading the absolute eye of a needle.
And the amount of naval treaties comes to mind.
The amount of comments I will still get, yes, the Soviet naval treaties, Stalin's naval treaties, that's completely threading the eye of the needle. But the thing is, the amount of people who still comment going, "Oh, this would never happen in real life," and I'm sort of going, "Well, no, it's an alternate history question from patrons. A, the patrons pay to support the channel. B, they pay, and as part of that, they get to propose topics and vote on these topics. So that's the voted from. So that's why I'm doing it." But I also said at the beginning, this is threading the frigging eyes of a needle. It's not high likelihood to happen in real life.
Yeah. Time for me to return the favour you did for me. Dr. Clark, would you please answer the next question from Chris, please? What if Scharnhorst sorted with Bismarck?
Then you actually have a very different scenario, because probably at that point, if you got 2 capital ships sorting, and the British will know about this, like they need Bismarck's coming, then the British are going to be operating in groups of 3 or 4. So instead of you having a scenario where you have Hood and Prince of Wales go off together, you probably have Hood, Prince of Wales, and King George V stay with Victorious, and they operate slightly further back using the reconnaissance aircraft to try and find so they can guide themselves in. You end up with a very different scenario. The moment the British always seek overmatch. When they know the Germans are out with a battleship and a heavy cruiser, they want 2 capital ships. If they thought the Germans were out with 2 capital ships and a heavy cruiser, they're going to want at least 3 capital ships. They're always going to want an overmatch, and that's how they're going to structure their forces. So you're going to get a completely different scenario. If Scharnhorst comes out with Bismarck, you have a very different scenario than you have any other time. But also, and I will say this, if you do have Scharnhorst come out with Bismarck, it's going to be delayed operations, so you could end up with having Hood might have been in refit by that point anyway, because of the time to get the fuel together and things. But also, B, you could have more of the King George V class in service. And so that can also change things completely. You could end up with... There is a theoretical point of view that if the British are hearing that the Germans are preparing for that kind of sortie, and they, let's be honest, are doing their best to study every single level of German activity completely going, the British probably do something along the lines of try and get Duke of York into service as quickly as possible, and you might end up with a scenario where you have a free King George V battle line, King George V class battle line, free ship battle line, be engaging them. So they could find themselves against King George V, Prince of Wales, and Duke of York in the same fight. And of course, Prince of Wales will have had time to fix her turrets.
Very good.
And we know historically, Scharnhorst and Duke of York have a very interesting relation.
Ba-bang, 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 ba-bang.
It changes things in that scenario, but also you also have to remember it will change the commander. In that scenario, it will be Tovey in direct command, and Tovey has a different approach of how he's going to command and run his fleet. You see that in how he puts Bismarck down. He does not believe in doing close control of his force. He lets them disperse and achieve their strength. He basically goes to Rodney, getting close and pummel. That is what you're good at. That is what you're designed to do. You're designed to be an anchor of a battle line. You're designed to close and pummel. Go close and pummel. King George V is designed to stand off a bit further, to do a bit of more long-range bombardment fire and all these things, and so that's what King George V does. And there's no kind of competition of, we've got to do the same role. No, we will do what's sensible for our ships, and I will quite happily command them both. And it's different styles. It's not to say the guy who commanded the Battle of Denmark Straits is wrong. It's not. It's the different styles of command. So if you have Tovey in charge of, let's say it is Hood, Prince of Wales, and King George V, it's going to be a very different battle than you had historically. Probably what he does is he keeps King George V and Prince of Wales together. They form a two-ship group. He has Victoria standing off, and he has Hood you go wide and attack from a different angle to divide their fire.
Yes.
And you maneuver freely while doing it. You know, that's going to be it.
That was a very thoroughly answered question. That's fantastic. Even if I wasn't here for most
of it.
So, from 1931, what killed off the Hawker Siddeley Dynamics under the sea guided weapon? I have no idea what that is. Anyone?
The fact it was made by Hawker?
No, it was actually had a lot of great ideas that were before their time, but it really had a lot of stuff which was before its time metallurgically, so it couldn't actually deliver on all those ideas.
It's just typical Hawker.
There are people who are going, well, this bit could work, and this bit could work, and they could work. Those bits could work, but the whole thing together couldn't work. So, that's just life.
There you are, folks. Fantastic. So, next on Fleet's list of things he needs to answer the question for. Where are we? Aha! Your typical gunnery officer... Oh, no, sorry. Chris asks, can you make a ground effect battleship? No, it doesn't work. Ground effect vessels have certain size limitations and certain... Well, it's basically practicality and cost that are the limits on how big you can make a ground effect vehicle and what you can use it for. If you're trying to make a ground effect transport, you've basically created a low-flying aircraft. If you're making a ground effect patrol vessel, you've created a low-flying maritime patrol aircraft. If you're making a ground effect warship, please stop.
If I remember correctly, a ground effect, don't you have to go exponentially faster the bigger you get for it to work properly?
Yes.
Yep.
Which means you very quickly run into the limit of how fast you can go in an atmosphere to create ground effect.
Yep. There are quasi ground effect vehicles that get around this by basically being actual aircraft that just piggyback on the ground effect. But at that point, it's just an aircraft that can utilize ground effect rather than a proper ground effect vehicle.
Pretty much.
From YouTube, Stephen Mayer asks, I once asked Dr. Clark how he would turn the spare Lexington class into fast supply vessels. Do any of the other Washington cherry trees make sense for a similar conversion?
I remember that question. Fast supply vessels. Honestly, the G3s you could turn into a fairly decent fast supply vessel because all their engines are aft. So you can put all the supplies forward.
Oh my lord, fast oil tanker.
I'm not so sure about the Amagis.
No, the Japanese vessels are about the worst candidates for it. Your typical gunnery officer asks, are we going to see a production restart for the F-22 since the 6th Gen fighter program isn't going to be in service till at least 2030? If we aren't going to see a restart, is the F-15EX the stopgap solution to the interceptor aircraft and working in tandem with other stealth fighters? No, we are not going to see a restart to Raptor production because they don't need to. Because the Raptor is going to be life extended and will serve until 2030. They have enough Raptors to do the jobs they need to do. It is a dedicated air superiority aircraft, and the United States Air Force's dedicated interceptor. The F-15EX is not a stopgap solution to interceptor aircraft. The F-22 is the interceptor. The F-15EX is to supplement the F-35 fleet and extend the life of the F-15 fleet up until we get both NGAD to replace F-22, and we get the... I can forget what it's called, the cheaper counterpart to the F-35 they're working on currently, the one that's going to replace the F-16. And maybe the F-15.
Originally that was gonna be the F-35, but let's be honest.
They've had to come up with something cheaper.
The big problem with the restarting the F-22 production line is some real idiots, Congress, decided to order the entire production plant to be not just mothballed, but destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
It was sold off and broken up. You'd have to rebuild the production line from scratch.
And also restarting...
Good luck!
Yeah, and also restarting F-22 production is not the right call anyway.
Okay, and also, how old's the F-22 now?
20 years old. It's still one of the most advanced fighters in the world. But that's just because of how far ahead it was. And also, you don't need to restart it. We've got what wins air-to-air engagements now is good radar, good missiles, good situational awareness.
And stealth.
Yes, and stealth. But
the first part of survivability is don't be seen.
But you can get by with the first two, which is what F-15EX is going to give them. And if you need stealth, F-35 exists.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make is, why are people assuming that the F-22 is the best America can make nowadays?
No, it's not.
Because tech's moved quick in the past 20 years.
Foxo, the reason they're talking about restarting is because the thing to replace F-22 they're working on, which is NGAD, isn't going to be in service until at least 2030. And the US wants more dedicated air superiority fighters. It's why they're life extending the F-22s.
Yeah. More F-35. That's all you really need.
The F-35 is a multi-role aircraft. It doesn't fill the same niche as F-22. There's a reason why F-22 is being life extended and not retired.
No, I don't think there's anything the F-22 can really do that the 35 can't either.
No, the F-22, from what we've seen, and this is heavily fucking classified from what we've talked to about it, it's better than the F-35 in some roles, but it's surplus to requirement being better. It's, from what I've heard, more expensive.
Yes, it is.
Per unit.
Yep, massively so.
And the F-35 in that role dominates everything that's not an F-22.
Yes.
But why do you need the F-22 that's just more expensive and you don't get any capability out of it you don't already have?
Well, the F-32...
The reason you have the F-22 is because, honestly, it is the nearest thing to death that has been flying around the Earth since the Cretaceous period. It is absolutely psychotic what some of the things it can do.
Yeah,
and the thing is... how do I put this? When you're talking about a dedicated fighter platform, it's got the dedicated fighter capabilities of the Eurofighter with the dedicated attack capabilities of the some dedicated stealth capabilities of the F-35. probably about the equivalency of those, and a few other things thrown in. Its main trouble is that it's not a multi-role aircraft, and that's why it suffered. That's why it was poor and cancelled. All these things, because there was not a pound for air to ground, basically, when they were building it, because they were building the most high-performance extreme fighter ever built. So far, and I say so far because having looked at its successor, the plans for its successor, those are pretty.
The US does not tolerate being second best in anything.
Well, and that's why the US at this point doesn't tolerate being second best to itself.
Yep, pretty much.
Because honestly, let's consider the aircraft, and Foxo is quite right here. Consider the aircraft currently available in the world. There are a lot of people talking a lot of trumpets, but let's be honest, the Americans are producing number 1 and number 2 and number 3 of the best air defense aircraft in the world at the moment.
The Chinese are scraping in with a distant 4th, and the Russians are scraping.
No. I would not class the Chinese as 4th.
No.
Bold of you to assume I'm talking about the Chinese totally stealth aircraft we swear of.
I'm not even referring to that one. I'm just meaning in general Chinese development.
I would say
well
in nicest way, the Eurofighter comes before that. The next tranche of Eurofighter comes before that. It comes before the Chinese one.
Yeah, it's a fair call.
Because
and then Rafale, it shares that spot with Rafale as well.
Yeah, pretty much.
Then you've got the Russian Su-35s. Not the 57s, the 35s. The 35s, we've seen from the war in Ukraine, the 35s have decent missiles, they're decently manned, their crews know what they're doing, they're proven decent air superiority fighters.
Yeah.
Then comes the
There
Chinese...
are massive asterisks in that, though.
What do you mean?
That
Don't operate anywhere near a Patriot battery.
Yeah, and it's the ones that we've seen that are the ones that are kicking ass, especially in the Russia-Ukraine war, are the westernized ones.
No, there are no westernized Su-35s.
I thought there was, because they're the ones that were westernized by Poland for them.
No, the Su-35.
Or is that the 29s?
No, there are westernized MiG-29s, and there are Su-27s operated by both sides. The Su-35 is an aircraft solely operated by the VKS, and it is the ultimate flanker. And it is proven that during the Russo-Ukrainian War. It is superior to the westernized MiG-29 and the westernized Su-27.
Yeah.
The Su-35 is
But
about...
there is still probably an F-15C somewhere out there which would like to meet it.
Oh yeah, completely. That's why I say it's 6th. Like, it's 6th, but it is...
Yeah.
But like, if it runs into anything that isn't a Western modern F-15, F-16... Well, the thing is...
No, I said F-15C for a reason here.
Yeah. Like, thing is...
I'm not talking about the modern F-15s. I'm talking the generational F-15Cs.
I don't know. With
the ones that were specifically designed to destroy flankers.
Well, no, they
also bring up the point you've got the KF-21s entering production at some point.
They were designed to destroy Su-27s. Su-35, with its more modern radar and missiles, is... Like, I love the F-15C, and it is great. But Su-35 is designed to kill F-15C. D&E F-15 is an equal match for Su-35, but 35 will trounce a C. Just
you don't want to. Always saying you do not want to throw an F-15E at an SU.
It's an E, the Strike Eagle.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he's the Strike Eagle.
He's basically the bomber one.
I mean,
I don't know.
With the amount of missiles that thing could carry.
Didn't one of the F-15 Strike Eagles actually achieve an air-to-air kill for bomb?
Yes, they dropped a laser-guided bomb on an attack.
This wouldn't surprise me.
On a helicopter.
Yeah, but it's still an air-to-air kill.
It is, but it's. Oh, how would I? Oh, anyway, look, I need to move forwards. Move forwards, fleet.
Yes,
you've got to do it.
Plenty of questions.
You got to do it. You got to do it.
Like, there's a lot of them.
Put the Chinese down this much.
Knight 683. Well, no. The Chinese have equivalents, so they're equal to the Russians. Like, and I'm not.
I would say the Chinese are probably better than the Russians at this point.
Yeah.
That's presuming the Russians sell them actually the best versions of their gear,
from what
the Chinese let me put it this way: the Chinese are some of the most technically savvy and able to produce excellent engineering people I know. They're also one of the military which most recently had the issues come to light that their ballistic missile defense troops and all the people arming them with missiles, their generals in charge had actually used the money that was supposed to be allocated towards their ballistic missiles and silos and defending those to line their pockets and
some of
properties.
It wasn't as widespread as the story initially made out. Nowhere near.
No, but the fact that any happened with any in such a high profile. My point is this: if that's happening with one of the most closely watched, closely observed, important sections of your armed forces.
Wait a minute.
What's happening in the rest?
Hang on. If I remember correctly, I'm just remembering more of it now. We're talking about it. Weren't the missiles that these battery commanders were stealing fuel from solid rocket-fueled missiles? So that seems impractical.
It was highly intriguing and interesting. Let me put it this way.
The Chinese ability to cook.
True. But what I will say is this. We know for a fact that the Russians are banned and refuse to sell Su-35 to China. So all they got was late model 27. Yep. They did not get 35 because the Russians didn't want them to have it. They also didn't get any MiG-25s or MiG-31s. Like, the MiG-31 is perhaps Russia's best answer to stealth interceptors, basically because it's the only thing that has the missile reach and the radar that's powerful enough to potentially see and engage those aircraft from a range that it might not instantly die.
Assume that the Russians are telling the truth about that shit.
Selling Su-35s to China.
Since when?
Since about 2017.
That explains a lot. Yep, no, I think...
No,
yeah.
20... actually, no, I tell a lie, it was 2016.
Yep, that explains a lot. Yep, that makes sense now, post-Crimean annexation. Yep, that makes sense. Foreign capital required, ally required, makes sense. Yep, that makes sense.
Anyway, I believe you were trying to move on, Fleet?
I was! That's right. Where were we? Knight 6831 asks, it is said that the wreck of HMS Hermes is being prevented from flipping over due to her superstructure. What does that say about her condition? She's surviving relatively intact so far. Maybe the rust is holding her together. But that's all I can say regarding that without going out and thoroughly inspecting her. And I don't have the money or the time.
We'll have to talk about this at some point. At some point, we'll have to come up with an idea for this.
Yes, we will. Oh wow, we've got a big gap here.
We'll need to work out. We're going to need to work out how Patreon can fund you going out there and doing some diving.
More feet pics.
No, I haven't done any feet pics. There will be no feet pics.
Actually, you have.
The money is in ankle. The money is in ankle pics now. I've heard.
No, please cease. Your typical gunnery officer asks, question 9, thoughts on superprop fighters like the XP-72, 51H, F-8F and others? Did they come in a bit too late before major countries started to use jet fighters as frontline fighters? Do you think they could be beast fighters if they all entered service in early 1945 during World War II? They would simply be the next generation of piston-engined fighter aircraft. We were seeing it all across the fighting powers of the war. The Japanese had them, the British had them, the Americans had them, the Germans had them, the Russians had them. There was this final generation of piston-engined aircraft, immediately pre-jet, that were the last word in piston-engined aircraft. They were by far the most powerful and the most effective piston-engined aircraft ever built.
I wrote an article once which was called "Peaking Obsolescence of Gun Innovation," all about them, and basically it was putting forward the case that this is what you often get when you reach the end of something. You produce the most mature and best designs of it, and they are probably the best things for you to procure. But if you procure them, that means you're not funding the next generation of technology, the next type of technology, which is at the critical stage of growing into that role. So it's a very dangerous point, because you have to decide, well, do I put the money into buying the new jets, which are not as capable as they can be yet by any stretch of the imagination, but are the future? Or do I put the money into this really mature design, which is going to provide me guaranteed capability, but I don't know for how long before they're overtaken by these, and if I haven't followed into this industry, then this industry might not develop well enough. So it's a problem.
Yep. Makes sense. There you are. So next is a YouTube question. Joshua Santos asks, how good would a conversion of the USS United States Ocean Liner to a carrier be? Abysmal. And I mean that in the politest way possible. By the time the USS United States is in commission, and you would consider conversion to a carrier, it is far too beyond the period where that is practical. It's also the SS United States, not USS, because it's not a ship owned by the American government. But the SS
the USS United States is a very different vessel than the SS United States.
Yeah, the SS United States is a liner. A post-war liner in an era where carriers are angle-deck monstrosities that displace far more than merchant ships could hope to at this point. Regardless of her speed, you are past the point where conversions are practical, because the carrier is no longer a straight-decked warship. And the carrier would not... And the carrier would...
in size is the big super tankers, isn't it?
Yes, but at that point you're in another kettle of fish entirely, because tonnage doesn't equate to ideal hull form. But yes, it's honestly an answer it's a question that sounds interesting, but unfortunately, because of the period when she's in service and the type of carriers that are around, it's a very open and shut question.
Thanks for the question, because it was interesting.
Oh yeah, it was an interesting idea, but unfortunately, it's a very open and shut question, sadly. Chris, what if Canada's 500,000-ton battleship was built? What would this thing's service be like? Well, first of all, congratulations, there is no more IGN, because all of the funding and crew has gone into this one stupidly large ship, and the US and the British are currently dancing around the halls of the Admiralty and the US Naval College going, the Japanese have completely lost the plot.
RAF Bomber Command, where's my tall boys?
Basically, yes, you can't miss with an object that size. Even if the thing moves in the first place...
which apparently it's meant to move at like 40 knots.
I doubt that highly. I will give it.
You're not the only one.
I will give it 20 knots on a good day with a following wind.
Like, looking at Clark's face, I'm very curious to know what Clark will say about this, because it's a mental design.
It's mental, and it also means the Japanese have basically ruined their ability to fight a war. You've seen it, right, Dr. Clark?
Why would you do that?
You wouldn't. you wouldn't.
Oh yeah.
You're just ruining your entire life.
And your navy.
Then you've got crewing and organising the thing, and the fact is you're going to need captains for different sections of it, let alone a captain for the whole ship.
Also, how do you resupply it? Like, that's a lot of 16-inch guns.
It has its own farm on board.
I'm meaning for ammunition, though. Like, that's a lot of 16-inch guns.
I'm just thinking food. Just imagine the sheer amount of people on board, the amount of food. You're going to make Japan as a nation starve keeping that thing going.
Yep. Basically. So next is a YouTube question. If the British had a mass driver built on Gibraltar in areas that are not protected by environmental laws, would that kill the US space shuttle program? No, absolutely not, because the program would not be completed, as building such a device is currently impossible as far as we are aware with current physical knowledge.
What type of mass driver?
You cannot you cannot build a mass driver to launch any significant payload into orbit, be it gun-based, magnetic-based, it doesn't matter. No significant payload can be launched into orbit from a mass driver with the technology we currently have available.
What's it called? A magnetic-based system with booster rockets could do it.
Yes, but the problem is that requires booster rockets, and at that point, for the cost involved, just build a rocket.
But the whole point is, though, that you don't have to build the rocket. The fact that with this is just these boosters basically strapped onto the end of the cargo thing, you can launch these far quicker than you can launch a rocket. It should basically boom and go.
Yes, but the problem is
that's the whole idea behind mass drivers.
Yes, but it doesn't make any sense.
It's theoretically possible, but it's not practical.
Especially not given where he wants to put it. In Gibraltar. Where?
Yes, I did find the choices a little bit strange.
Obviously, put it in Stonehenge.
No, but the point I'm trying to make is
oh no, not again.
Well, first of all, Knight, you can't build anything like that in Gibraltar. There isn't the room, and you'd have to deal with the saltwater corrosion. It would be a very, very bad idea. Secondly, the space shuttle offers a much cheaper and more cost-effective way to get to space until this system is built, and the cost of construction would probably bankrupt Britain. Thirdly, the mass driver would probably not be able to deal with things that aren't satellites. So, Hubble Space Telescope, sections of the International Space Station, that sort of thing. Crude launches would also be just out of its purview. It would basically be seen as the British government's white elephant that would probably go nowhere and result in whoever suggested it being hung, drawn, and quartered and then run over by a tank.
I think the thing is, if it's built on the British mainland, and you can use it for launching satellites, it very quickly becomes a commercial satellite launching system and is used as a method of making money. And its rate of satellite launching is going to be quite fast.
Absolutely, yeah. If you build it in Britain, I can see it slipping into that role really easily. But you're not going to be able to build it in Gibraltar.
No, not in Gibraltar. You might be able to get it in Tintagel.
Maybe.
There is enough very strong rock around there to support it that you could build it down and put it in there. And then you could say you're launching from the seat of Arthur, of Arthur's court to it was good to launch stuff from King Arthur.
At that point, you just have to call it Excalibur and go for megalomaniac villain.
I was going to call it Merlin. Or Merlin's wand.
Possibly, that could work.
There's always Caliban, there's the Stone / Lection.
The Rock of Gibraltar.
There's a good few names you could go with.
The Rock of Gibraltar has a natural slope. That does not make it suitable. That does not make it suitable. Just because the Rock of Gibraltar has a natural slope, it really doesn't, it's not even at the right angle. First of all. And it's not even pointing the right way. And also, as has been said, if you want a mass driver for orbital launches, you build it on the equator.
The British had to use Guyana to make it.
In many ways, Ascension is a better choice than Gibraltar.
Yes.
Ascension Island.
Funny names.
But it's an interesting concept, but it's not really something that the British will be able to build, or that I think anyone is really considering at this point.
We can't afford to currently build proper railways. What makes you think we can afford to build a proper mass driver?
We can afford to build proper railways. The government doesn't want to pay for proper railways.
Yes.
Don't remind me.
Look, I could get into
they also don't give it anywhere near enough oversight.
I could get into a whole thing about the current state of the British railway network, and we'd be here all day, and I'd rather not, because I have different opinions.
What do you mean we can barely afford HS2? HS2 was scrapped in favour of £2 bus tickets.
Dragon, that's not entirely what
Anyway, I've got a dip now, so...
Bye for now, folks. No, it's one of the points is what's it called? Reaper said we can barely afford HS2. No, it's the fact that it's bloody now being reduced to... Their whole thing was, don't worry, the north of England. We'll give you the same transport economy by making your bus tickets only cost £2.
That wasn't quite what they said.
Yeah.
But
it basically is, though.
No,
and they said they might consider upgrading the East Coast main road system to be a double-tracked road up to Scotland. But that's only if demand is enough for it. It's not like they've been promising this for the past bloody 80 years.
Chris asks, 100 armoured cruisers versus the Yamato. Well, to be fair, it doesn't really matter what armoured cruisers they are. Yamato will just keep firing till their ammunition runs out and then run away laughing.
Yamato's secondaries will destroy 100 armor cruisers before they even have to run out of ammunition. Anyway, so I'm going to just say toddles, because it's bedtime for me and dinner time for someone, and someone is making a claim the dead end of time.
Fair enough.
A very pressing claim.
Right, I know I have a
very pressing claim. I think I'm losing the rights here, so I'm
No,
gonna go feed them.
Goodbye, Dr. Clark.
Doggo winning.
Doggo
Bye for now.
Right, I'm just gonna say this. I am going to go for another 15 minutes because I do want to have a bit of chill this evening because I need it. Fleet's not having a good time.
You always say this.
I say this, and this time I mean it. So, I'm gonna get a rapid fire. So,
Doubt.
we just did, so... According to the wiki page for the Helgoland class... No, we did Discord. That was 100 Armored Cruisers versus the Yamato. According to the wiki page for the Helgoland class, there was a rejected additional design that have 12 guns in 2 pairs of super firing turrets and 2 cross-deck firing turrets. Is there anywhere that goes into more detail about this design? It's a pity I didn't get this in earlier because Dr. Clark would probably have been able to tell you. I sadly do not have any information on where you might find more information about that. Dr. Clark probably would, but I sadly do not. And that's YouTube questions done for now. Chris asks, what type of crew suffers the most casualties on a battleship? It depends on what sort of hits they take, what sort of engagement the battleship's involved in, what era it is in. Boiler room crews do take heavy casualties usually, because of where they are in the ship. Those out on deck, vulnerable to shrapnel, they usually take heavy casualties. But it varies from battle to battle, and there's no strict rule that dictates who takes more casualties than others. Question from Sufficiently Nautical. Suppose in mid-1940 the Admiralty gets accurate, reliable, and convincing intelligence on the true nature of the Yamato class. How does this change the British capital shipbuilding program? Points I've pondered. Do they cancel Iron Duke of York, Howard Anson, then crash build the Lions? Is it too late to upgrade Howard Anson to supercharged 15-inch design? If that's even enough to scratch the Yamato, what happens to Vanguard? Are there any 18-plus-inch naval guns that can be squeezed into an emergency design, since Britain will be busy with Germany for a bit before they send service forces to tangle with Yamato? I'm really, really sorry to tell you this, and pour water on what has probably been a roaring alternate history fire. But mid-1940, nothing changes. Genuinely. They are too far gone into the KGV program to change it. They are not at war with Japan right now. They are at war with Germany. They do not crash build the Lions. They will finish the KGVs. They will build Vanguard. Vanguard will be accelerated. The Lions might be unpaused, but that would be pretty much all that changes. And the British would hope that by the time they get there, the Americans will have either dealt with it, or they'll have carriers to deal with it. The response to Yamato by Britain will not be battleship design and construction. At least not in any significant change. CJ Clow 05, a modern iPhone with plug-in charger is found on a desk in a German computer lab in 1941. What do they do with it?
Be very confused.
They are confused, and it is played with until it runs out of power and can't be charged, because the plug and chargers of the modern era are not compatible with the plugs and chargers in the 40s and 50s.
Yep. Also, I don't even know if necessarily the voltages are right, and there's all sorts of other factors that come into play.
Knights of the Ornos, what were the 20 Commandanti Migali di Oro class destroyers intended to deal with? Let me see what these are.
I've got not a clue what they are, I'm afraid, off the top of my head.
There were a group of 20 destroyers, order for the Italian Navy. 9 had been laid down, but all were cancelled. Judging from what I can see of them, judging by the size of them, judging by what they are, I think they're just a result of Italian experience during the war. Yeah, that's literally it. They seem to be just Italy's design for a war-built destroyer to replace the losses that they've taken and to be a much better ship. Seems to have been a new template for an Italian modern destroyer. With 4 to 5 guns all on the centre line, decent torpedo. Yeah, it just seems to be a modern all-round Italian destroyer. It should be going officer asks, what if the F-16 had Delta Wings from the start? Are we going to see Delta Wing F-35 instead? The F-16 having Delta Wings will not impact any other aircraft. In any way. What's next? Thoughts? What was the thought process on the heavily armed and relatively fast-run oil tanker Cimarron class? They had the equivalent firepower of 5-inch guns on the Sims-Benson class DD, and they're relatively quick for a tanker. Fast fleet oiler. The concept of an oiler that can keep up with the strategic movement speed of a fleet on combat operations and defend itself to a reasonable degree. And that's where Dr. Clark came in. Question 10. Thoughts on the AF Guardian SW plane, since the aircraft uniquely operate in pairs to surge and attack submarines effectively? I've not really heard of this aircraft, but presumably operating in pairs was something that was worked into the design, and judging by the fact that they're relatively unknown, presumably they were phased out relatively quickly once a single aircraft that can do the job of two of them was brought into service.
Wouldn't make sense. Why have two planes when you can just use one?
Question 11. Thoughts on the massive LVT-7. It was quite larger than the World War II era LVT-4. What was the thought process on the larger size and enclosed hull, unlike the open-topped LVTs of World War II? It was a response to the increasing size of troop packs and equipment, the increasing lethality of the battlefield, and, simply put, the vehicle had to get bigger to deal with the changing battlefield conditions. That's about the long and short of it. Oh, Dragon's cat. Oh, he's called Tom.
Yes, they demanded a
lovely.
cat.
That's lovely. What would Anakin Skywalker's sentence be if he was trialed for his war crimes in The Hague? Life imprisonment. The Hague doesn't hand out
You missed
death
one.
No, I didn't.
What IRL technology / weapon should be effective in 40k?
Basically anything we presently have: infantry, small arms, anti-tank guided missiles.
Wouldn't make a difference.
Against cultists, yes, it would.
Las rifles are far more effective. They literally will cause a person to burst.
It's not about being more effective, Dragon. It's about being effective.
Then
infantry, small arms, heavy machine.
Standard infantry weapon will not affect a cultist unless they are the cultists with literally wearing nothing, and those aren't that common anymore in 40k.
Flak jackets aren't going to resist 7.62 or 5.56.
Flak jackets can resist Las rifles, Fleet.
Since when?
Since like 5th edition.
Oh, really?
It's been quite a long time they've been up to that. But you need to have the decent flak jackets. You can't have the ones that are cold flak jackets but are basically hay stuffed in.
Well, it might be able to resist it, but you might be able to resist it, but it's still going to knock you flat on your ass from the impact, and it's going to fucking hurt.
Yes, but
so therefore,
most rifles aren't going to do the same effective power. Honestly, actually, I'd say Sabo. Sabo high explosive squash head / high explosive anti-tank probably would be the most useful stuff.
Any tank rounds, 80 GM rounds. Auto cannon will be effective. You get laser guided bombs, just any of the bombs we currently have. Missiles, especially air to air, air to ground missiles. They're just more reliable than 40k weapons. Not as powerful, but more reliable.
Aegis actually won't be as effective as you think, Brackman. 40k already has laser-based point defense systems.
Yeah, it's not going to go well, Chief.
Basically, Aegis but laser.
Yeah, and also the Hydra.
What more can you hope for?
Also, the Hydra flak tanks are kind of silly. Night asks, what is Fleet's plans for Ramblings 50? I don't know. I haven't decided.
That's a good point.
Probably
that's next one.
Yeah, probably I'll get Drac on and Dr. Clark on, see if I can get Rex on. Get as many people as I can. Get as many people as I can, basically. And... what are the panel's favourite ships in both Star Wars and Star Trek? In Star Trek, I'm sorry, it's got to be the Connie. I am a sucker for the classics. In Star Wars, my favourite ship has to be... I know Dragon is biased. Dragon will call me a biased cunt here, but I'm sorry, the Mediator Printer must go Burr.
He just likes that because it's the only ship he could actually try and fight me with because it was overpowered as hell.
I like the Mediator Battle Cruiser, and the fact that the
Mediator's design's not bad, though, I have to admit.
And now it's your
it's
turn.
A decent ship. I'll give you the shorthand version because Fleet probably doesn't want me to go to the longhand because there's too many. Very quickly, probably Ikera/Excelsior from Canon, and for Star Trek, or for Star Wars, it's the Praetor 2.
Nice.
Theoretically speaking, that list should be far longer.
Yep. The Primaris Marine question was already addressed by the panel while I was away. And
no, it wasn't.
What do you guys think about Primaris Marines? I think... they exist. I'm not bothered by them in the same way some people are. Some people got way too worked up over the fact that new Space Marines existed. I'm like, it doesn't bother me in any way.
I think they're actually a fascinating thing, and Games Workshop's only reasonable attempt to create new ship models, because if you look at old Space Marine models versus newer Imperial Guard models, a Space Marine was smaller than a Guardsman. So you either have the thing of, oh, well, all Space Marines have always been like this, or give an actual reason for why this makes sense. And when you actually go looking in-depth into the lore, there are enough reasons. For instance, he was literally given access to the Emperor's own gene labs to figure this out. He had countless thousands of people helping. It wasn't just Call.
And he
it was a lot of people.
And he had 10,000
years to work on stuff. Like, it makes sense. They make sense from both a model perspective and a lore perspective, even if people don't necessarily like it. I think most problem comes from the fact that Space Marines were always meant to be beginner's first army. And when you look at late firstborn models versus Primaris models, put it this way, I would not have had a hope in hell of properly doing a late firstborn model kit, because there's like 40 extra components per Marine than what Primaris have.
Yeah. So, the final question, which is ironically enough something CJ said...
Custodies are fine, Brackman.
Which is CJ said... I'm picking this one deliberately because it's the one CJ said he doubted we would get to it. What if USS Roanoke replaced USS Monitor at Hampton Roads? Virginia dies, and she dies hard. Really, really hard. Not only does Roanoke have 15-inch Dahlgrens, but she also has 15-inch Dahlgrens that are using the heavier charges because she was built later in the war after multiple tests had been done. Virginia dies. She dies very hard. Right. Now then, I'm actually going to finish on time, and I do have a quick announcement. Fleet is currently in something of a funding crisis, so... I don't normally do this, as it's not something I like to do, but given my current circumstances, I'm going to have to bury my morals for a second, and my principles. Please, 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 go and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. And please, 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 like and do all that nonsense, leave a comment, so the algorithm does its MacGuffins. And if you can spare a few pennies, go to the link in the description, and go and check out my Patreon. If you can. Obviously, if you can't, I completely understand, because we're all suffering here. But if you can spare me a little bit, that's fine. Also, Brightman, there's nothing wrong with female custodies. I'm actually okay with it, and I think it's a fantastic idea. And on that controversial bombshell, it is time to end. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to everyone for coming. Thank you for the YouTube commentators. Thank you to the Discord questionnaires. Thank you to everybody.